Hello. It's Monday. The weekend's over, unfortunately, and there sure has been a lot happening. I mean, I know I say this every Monday since I catch up on current events, but you know, the idiocy of current happenings just continues. There are a few events that were positive that I want to talk about because we need these. We need these wins. It really helps us to keep the momentum going. So, welcome to Whatever This Is, an attempt at providing education, advocacy, and a little common sense in this digital wasteland. My name's Aubri Devashrayee. Oh, I guess I forgot to say that it's another day, another stream in fascist America. So, there you go. Now I just did. Ugh, okay. I feel like Oscar Wilde today. I was about to jump into it, but I feel like I have to acknowledge that. If you don't know what Oscar Wilde looks like. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. In my mind, this is me. It's not too far off, though. Yeah, the middle part. It's the Oscar Wilde Fran Lebowitz special. The like this length of hair. His hair's a little bit longer than mine. Well, if mine was straight. I mean, neither of us are straight. Very queer. I'm very queer. He wasn't a straight marriage, but yeah, this is how I'm feeling today. I'm channeling this. Anyway. Okay, moving on. I want to go over headlines by Democracy Now, per usual, as I do, and then get into more of the details. For example, Trump fired some judges who blocked deportations. We're going to talk about that. Trump recently deleted a picture of him that was AI that was depicting him as Jesus Christ. And MAGA land is very upset at him, and I love that. Hello, Slick Eye. Welcome, welcome. How was your weekend? Do anything exciting? Then we'll go over Eric Swalwell and all of those allegations of sexual assault against him because we need to talk about that. More Epstein stuff. Viktor Orban lost his election. That's great. The fascists really are losing power globally, and that's really good for us. So, again, taking these wins. There was this warehouse fire over the weekend where a worker lit it up, and that's great. That's really great. So I want to talk about that, and then get into Culture Corner because I forgot to do that Friday, which is rare for me because I love Culture Corner so much because I'm pretentious and think I have great taste and opinions on culture, but we'll do that today. So I'm leaving room for that. And then we'll get into the Scarlet Pimpernel. Decent weekend. Nice. Glad to hear it. I didn't really do a whole lot this weekend. It was just kind of boring adult stuff of like cleaning. Oh, my partner and I, we started and finished that new series, new-ish, that Game of Thrones one about the night, like the Night of the Seven Kingdoms or something. I thought it was great. So I may bring that up during Culture Corner. Thank you. I was just saying I feel like Oscar Wilde today. I would need like a cane. Very, very fitting for his character. that he put off in society, but also just an icon that I aspire to. Hello, Stuart Little is my son. Speaking of my partner, we were watching The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I enjoyed it. It actually had some levity to it, which was desperately needed, I feel, in Game of Thrones. It's just so much drama, and, you know, that's the style, I guess, but it's nice to actually have some humor in there and focusing more on like working class people. We saw some class solidarity, which was cool. It didn't really change the hierarchy of things, like the system within Westeros, but still an entertaining watch, I think. Okay. Oh, I forgot to pull up a funny video. There is one that I want to show. I watched this over the weekend. Yeah, the somewhat healthy male relationships were nice to see. Yeah, just any sort of healthy relationships, but especially seeing like good friends, like having a like pro-social interaction rather than being like, oh, we're friends and then I'm gonna kill you the next second. It's like, oh, they actually are supporting each other? Question mark. I guess we'll take it. That's really nice to see. And it looks like it's setting it up for a second season, which I'd watch. I like that it had some levity and it wasn't just focusing on all the royals. Okay. It's this video. Da, 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 da. Shall we get into the content? Let's do it. Okay. Every episode of Ancient Aliens. If you've seen Ancient Aliens, I would watch this. It would scare me growing up because I was always scared of aliens, and to be honest, I still kind of am. Mostly like the part where they are like trying to like possess you or like invade your body non-consensually and pop out of your body and shit. That is not okay with me. But especially with how shitty the world is right now, aliens do not seem to be as much of a current threat. We all know how. Because I think if they saw Earth, if they do exist, they probably do, you know, they're like, why would we want to take that? You've like ruined it. And the people there are really mean. They're really awful. Why would we want to even keep them as like servants or something? Okay. This is by the account Butterfaces. I've been watching a lot of their stuff lately. I do like to watch their stuff consistently, but I've been watching them more recently. So let's give this a watch.
We all know how aliens have shaped our planet's landscape, our history, our way of life. But today, we dive deep into how aliens have influenced our pop culture. This is Ancient Aliens.
Showing the gaga.
Our society's fascination with celebrities has gone on for hundreds of years. But why are we as humans so drawn to these people? And how do they become celebrities in the first place?
Some
They're
people
aliens.
think Post Malone's singing voice is just Justin Bieber's voice. Slow down.
That's me. This is me. Especially the one earring. Look at this. Look at this fluffy shirt. Anytime I can have an excuse to look like a flamboyant Victorian pirate, I will take that opportunity. This is kind of this. Maybe more business. Anyway.
Crazy, right? Or maybe not so crazy.
In the year 1962.
Wait, so they're saying that celebrities are aliens? I mean, yeah. they might as well be, with how different they act and how much different they think they are from the rest of us.
The movie To Kill a
Fame has like melted
Bird
so many of
was
their brains.
released. No one knew who Gregory Peck was before then, and all of a sudden he was shot into stardom. But where did he come from? He couldn't have just...
Also, the lighting is so accurate. It's always like kind of bad lighting, but then there's like color behind. There is usually like a weird guy that... I mean, they're all full of weird people, but who especially is like talking in a weird manner. The haircuts, I mean, I don't have room to talk. The haircuts are always unusual as
appeared
well.
overnight. Or could he?
We know that the Flobtron race of aliens made contact with the Earth in the year 1962.
Yeah, that is
The
me.
crater that their spaceship created when it crash landed is Prof. And since the aliens aboard that ship had no way of returning home, they found a way to fit into our society
Returning home.
by becoming the people we'd least expect to be aliens. Celebrities.
She's trying not to laugh.
Post Malone's
Aliens.
singing voice isn't just Justin Bieber slowed down. They're the same person, the same alien, that is. And it all started with
Even the
Gregory
caption's alien. The caption actually got that right.
I have studied the 1962 Flortron landing in depth. It's one of only 3 times in our planet's history that an alien has come to the Earth and stayed. The first was, of course, the Zaltor meteor that killed the dinosaurs. Our ancestors crawled out of
stock
it and made a
footage.
home here.
Since the days
It's
of
so
Gregory
bad.
Peck, we have all been influenced by the very same alien in our everyday lives. The alien loved the fame and fortune that came along with being Gregory Peck, and he wanted more of it. So he began splitting his body into more and more parts.
Uh-oh.
The Fortron body is
See,
like
all the
that
haircuts.
is of
I mean, they're wigs.
If
Obviously.
a woman, a fully functioning creature would grow and go about life as normal.
Alien Wrangler.
So that's what the Fortron.
Look at this vest. Oh my god. Yeah. That's very characteristic of the people on this show. Also, I would wear that vest. So, characteristic of me. It's saying a lot that I'm resonating with many of these outfits.
Decided to do.
Almost any celebrity you can think of originates from this original Gregory Peck Flobtron. Despite its many contributions to our culture, the Flobtron has...
Just a non-accent.
That's why when someone says,
What
"Oh,
is
I
that?
met Emma Roberts, she was an asshole," it's because Emma Roberts is a Flobtron. The Flobtron is an asshole. He hates us. This
He
creature
hates
has
us.
complete control over our planet.
That is me.
Justin Bieber and Post Malone are just the beginning. The Flortron is also Kendall Jenner, Lil Yachty, Ariana Grande, Missy Elliott, Hailey Bieber. Yes, he married himself. Gordon Ramsay, Chelsea
married
Kim,
himself.
LeBron James, Ariana Grande, every mumble rapper, Timothy Chalamet, Khloe Kardashian,
Every
Keenan
mumble
Slovis,
rapper.
David Beckham, and Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
We may never truly know how many of the people we idolize
The end.
are in fact the same Flortron that started out as Gregory Peck. But what we do know is that aliens are in charge. We're just merely players in their game. Ancient aliens.
All right. Okay. So, now that we have that under our belt, I guess we can get into the idiocy of current events. Shall we? Let's see what Amy Goodman has in store for us. Reporter extraordinaire.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump's announced a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz starting 10 a.m.
I'm gonna
today.
grab my drink real
Iran
quick.
called it
I'll
an
keep
act
this
of
playing.
piracy. It comes after negotiations between the U.S. and Iran in Islamabad, Pakistan, collapsed Sunday without a deal. Vice President J.D. Vance declared Iran, quote, chose not to accept our terms, unquote. Iranian state media blamed, quote, excessive demands, unquote, from Washington for the talks' collapse. Meanwhile, President Trump watched a UFC cage fight in Miami with Secretary of State Marco Rubio during the ceasefire negotiations. This comes as CNN's reporting China's preparing to deliver new air defense systems to Iran within weeks following over a month of U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran. This is President Trump speaking to Fox News Sunday.
We didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons.
In Lebanon, an Israeli strike killed an infant girl during her father's funeral on Sunday. The baby's sister, 7-year-old Aline Sayed, had attended the funeral wrapped in bloodied bandages from an Israeli strike on her family home Wednesday. The Israeli strike on Sunday also killed other relatives at the funeral. This is Nasser Sayed, the girl's grandfather.
What humanity are they talking about? This is humanity? This isn't humanity. This is a war crime. Where are the human rights? If a child is wounded in Israel, the whole world jumps up. Are we not people? Are we not humans? We're like them.
Lebanon's health ministry says Israeli attacks have killed over 2,000 people, including 100.
We need Nuremberg trials. We need to send people to The Hague, Netanyahu, Trump. So many people who are part of their administrations who are incredibly bloodthirsty and violent, causing all of this death. This is why I think we need a world strike where we withhold our labor to halt the industrial war machine and force them to meet our demands of ending genocides and wars that we have not agreed to, that our tax dollars are paying for. And I know it's a long shot trying to get a global working class solidarity movement, but I think we are very primed for that. And, you know, I don't see how these people will stop unless we make them.
65 children since March 2nd. More than 1.2 million Lebanese have been displaced. On Sunday, an Israeli military tank rammed into UN peacekeeping vehicles twice in southern Lebanon, blocking a road used to access UN positions in the region. An Israeli strike in southern Lebanon also killed a Red Cross paramedic and injured another emergency worker. At least 7 Palestinians were killed in Israeli strikes across the central and southern Gaza Strip on Saturday. An Israeli drone fired 2 missiles near a police post in Burej refugee camp, hitting a group of civilians. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, Israeli attacks have killed more than 700 Palestinians and injured more than 2,000 since the so-called ceasefire took effect last October. Meanwhile, a second global Samud flotilla carrying humanitarian aid set sail for Gaza on Sunday from Barcelona, aiming to break the Israeli blockade. Organizers are calling it the largest civilian maritime effort in history. Last October, the Israeli military halted the previous global Samud flotilla, arresting Greta Thunberg and more than 450 other participants. This is organizer Thiago Avila.
We'll see if they're actually able to deliver the aid.
Fear the people because of their violations, both war criminals, but also the Epstein class and all the other things that they do, they will be made accountable. And we will not stop.
Talking about the Epstein
In the
class.
United Kingdom, police arrested over 500 pro-Palestinian activists at London's Trafalgar Square on Saturday. They were holding signs that read, quote, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action," unquote.
Yeah.
Palestine Action was declared a terrorist organization in the UK last year, making support for the group punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Britain's
Holocaust
High Court
survivor
struck
descendants against Gaza genocide. Yeah. I mean, so many Western nations are complicit. Israel would not have the means to be exacting this genocide without the US as the biggest funder, but the UK also is an enormous funder. And the fact that they came out and said that Palestine Action was a terrorist group when they don't condemn these other groups, a lot of white supremacist groups, as terrorists is really telling.
Down the ban earlier this year on free speech grounds. The government's appealed the ruling. Nearly 3,000 people have been arrested since the ban on Palestine Action was first imposed. Hundreds face charges. President Trump slammed Pope Leo on Sunday night, posting on Truth Social. He does not, quote, want a pope who criticizes the president of the United States because I'm doing exactly what I was elected in a landslide to do, Trump claimed.
Actually, I think the people who voted for you would disagree, sir, that you have gone back on all of your campaign promises, which is what many of us were saying before he was elected, but now they're starting to listen and learn because he's impacting their Christianity. And they don't care that people have been brutalized and kidnapped and trafficked to concentration camps. They like that. That's how you know they're fascist. And also, just par for the course, that fascists will say and do anything in order to get into power and then implement all of their plans for self-enrichment and benefiting their friends, and then expansionist projects that are incredibly violent.
Credit for Pope Leo's election, writing, "If I wasn't in the White House, Leo wouldn't be in the Vatican." Trump also criticized Pope Leo for meeting with David Axelrod, the former senior advisor to President Obama. Earlier today, President Trump posted an AI...
This is what they're upset about. Yeah, it doesn't matter that there's been all of this unconscionable, immoral death, that human beings are suffering and dying because of this shithead. But they're like, you can't, we can only compare you to Christ. You can't say that. You can't say that you're Jesus. It's like, calm the fuck down. But this is who he is. He doesn't care. He doesn't have any morals. He doesn't have any sort of like religious standards or whatever. He's not a religious person whatsoever. It's just insane to see the backlash where people are like, I can't believe he'd do this. Oh, really? Have you seen how he does anything? Have you listened at all to what he says and does?
Venerated image of himself as Jesus Christ. Here's Pope Leo responding to Trump's attacks.
I don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in the way that some people are doing. And I will continue to speak out loudly against war.
Pope Leo is...
Good for him. This Pope really is, I think, doing a great job at supporting people around the world. There are many issues with the Catholic Church. I'm definitely not an apologist for that, but I have been impressed with the way that he has been standing up to Trump. And the reason Trump is so pissed is because he realizes how much influence and power Pope Leo has.
It's on a 4-country trip in Africa. He's just landed in Algeria. The Trump administration's fired immigration judges who dismissed high-profile deportation cases against international students who joined protests in support of Palestinians. Judge Rupal Patel had ruled in January the government had no grounds to deport Rumeysa Öztürk, the Turkish-born Tufts student targeted by the Trump administration. Öztürk was personally targeted by Secretary of State Marco Rubio after she wrote an op-ed in a student newspaper critical of Tufts University's stances on Palestinian causes. Judge Patel was fired Friday, as were 5 other judges, including Nina Froese, who in February...
I wonder at whose behest this happened. Because it seems to me that there are many things happening at the behest of Israel. I know there are some people saying like, well, Israel wouldn't even be in the place that it is without the US, and that's true. But they really, like Netanyahu and these other prime ministers, really have had the American government by the balls. This explains a lot of foreign policy. This isn't to give in to anti-Semitic conspiracies that's saying like Jews control the world, but very real blackmail, I'm assuming, the Israeli government has on Trump. It would explain a lot, and not just Trump, of course, like Bill Clinton and, probably so many other leaders who've been in government.
Ended deportation proceedings against Columbia University Palestinian student Mohsen Madawi. Both of the fired judges told the New York Times they'd come under pressure from the Trump administration to order more deportations. In Hungary, the far-right Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has conceded defeat in Sunday's parliamentary election, bringing 16 years of authoritarian rule to an end. Official results show Peter Magyar and his center-right pro-EU TISA party won in a landslide with more than the two-thirds majority needed to reverse Orban-era changes to Hungary's constitution.
That he won in a landslide, especially with Viktor Orban, like, historically doing a lot of things to rig elections to keep him in power. That shows that there were so many people voting against him that it was just undeniable that he lost, and he conceded early. And we saw J.D. Vance went and campaigned for him, and he truly is such a clown, and people hate him so much. He's so unlikable that wherever he goes, it's the kiss of death to people's political careers. And to the previous post, a literal kiss of death.
Tens of thousands of people celebrated the results in the streets of Budapest Sunday night.
I think this nation woke up and we try to rebuild all the relationship in our families, because this is the most important thing, the love and kindness, and to believe in the future. And this nation, one of the best nations in Europe, and we can change also other nations to wake up.
Orban has been Prime Minister of Hungary since 2010, making him the European Union's longest-serving leader. He was supported by Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Trump administration. Last week, Vice President J.D. Vance traveled to Budapest to campaign for Orban ahead of Sunday's election. We'll have more on this story later in the broadcast.
The charisma vacuum.
Nigeria's government's denying reports that its Air Force mistakenly bombed a crowded market Saturday after Amnesty International reported over 100 civilians, including children, were killed in an attack on the village of Zili in Yobe State. The village is near the border of Borno State, the epicenter of a Boko Haram insurgency that's ravaged the region for over a decade. In a statement, a spokesperson for Nigeria's president called the market a legitimate military target, adding, quote, "The narrative that those who were killed are innocent civilians is totally false," unquote. The Nigerian military regularly bombs vast forest enclaves to battle Boko Haram and Islamic State groups operating throughout the region. In Southern California, a 29-year-old warehouse worker is being held without bail after his arrest in connection with a massive 6-alarm fire at a paper products warehouse east of Los Angeles. Tuesday's fire at a Kimberly-Clark.
This is direct action at work. The implications for this are very far-reaching. It is a very clear way to show the ruling class, the 1%, the Epstein class, these capitalists, what people can do when they are so upset.
Warehouse completely destroyed
about all
the
of their
1.2 million
greed
square
and deplorable
foot
working
facility,
conditions.
causing an estimated $600 million in damages. Prosecutors say it was started by Chumel Abdulkarim, who allegedly texted a coworker afterward comparing himself to Luigi Mangione, the alleged killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Similar.
A social media video appears to show Abdulkarim using a lighter to set fire to paper products while criticizing corporate greed and inadequate pay.
All you had to do was pay us enough to live. All you had to do was pay us enough to live.
In Ireland, a man climbed...
That's an American hero, in my book. That really sends a message.
Onto the roof of a U.S. military aircraft as it was parked at Shannon Airport Saturday using a hatchet to sabotage its wing and fuselage. Police said they arrested a man in his 40s but didn't identify him, as action caused extensive damage to the $75 million C-130 Hercules military transport. Shannon Airport is a frequent site of protests demanding the Irish government end U.S. military chartered flights and weapons shipments to Israel. In California, Democratic Congressmember Eric Swalwell has suspended his gubernatorial campaign after a former staffer said he twice raped her when she was heavily intoxicated, leaving her bruised and bleeding. 3 other women also alleged sexual misconduct by Swalwell in interviews with CNN. Swalwell denied the claims but said he would suspend his campaign for governor of California while fighting what he called serious false allegations.
And there were many... Of course, when this happens, there are so many people that are victim blamers, and they're like, well, why are they drinking? Well, didn't she consent? It seemed like she enjoyed it. Why would she go back? That it's like, we really haven't learned anything as a society when it comes to believing people who come forward about these horrible things that they've gone through, that they take on a lot of risk, that they are actively putting themselves out there for the world to be reacting in that way. That people don't come out and say this shit unless they feel like there is a very serious consequence if they don't. They don't want this to happen to more people. They don't want him to be gaining more power and what he will do with that power, how he will hurt more people. So I'm really glad that he withdrew from the campaign, and there were people who endorsed him in the House, like big name Democrats like Jamie Raskin and Robert Garcia. And that's important. It's important that they have withdrawn their endorsements of him. It shows, okay, we actually have some sort of line that people shouldn't cross. That's important because we are desperately missing this kind of moral clarity and backbone when it comes to our politicians.
On Saturday, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office said it had launched an investigation into the rape allegations. A growing number of lawmakers, including Democrats, are calling on Swalwell to resign from Congress. Many are also calling on Texas Republican Congressmember Tony Gonzalez to quit, too, after he admitted to an affair with a former staffer who later took her own life, burning herself to death. Gonzalez is also accused of sending sexually explicit messages to a former campaign aide.
Yeah, all of these fucking people need to go. It doesn't matter what party you're in. If you are committing crimes, if you are abusing people, if you are hurting people, if you are using your office to especially get away with this kind of bullshit, yeah, you need to go. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, especially the ones that are like, oh, but it was consensual. What about, like, you can say no. It's like, don't you understand that there are power imbalances, these power dynamics of an employer and a staffer, of age a lot of the time, and how people can't fully give consent when there are these power imbalances. That's just the truth. And it is deeply concerning that it is such a common thing among politicians, but this is what needs to happen. All of these fucking creeps need to be purged from power. That it's just that simple.
And New York City Mayor Zoran.
Also, over the weekend, as I was learning about all of this, as we all were, there were many people that, you know, the victim blamers that are trying to say, where was I going with this? I pause it just to forget what I was talking about again. Oh, there were these Republicans that are like, see how it feels, Democrats? Ha ha ha. That's like, that is not the flex you think it is. That you have so many fucking rapists and like sexual abusers and pedophiles in your party that now you're like, haha, see how it feels? It's like, do you understand what you're even saying? Clearly not. it's just wild. And it's like, it shouldn't matter what party you are a part of. If you are doing these things, you need to go.
Mamdani marked his first 100 days in office with a pair of rallies Sunday, first at Terminal 5 in Manhattan and later at the Knockdown Center in Queens. Independent Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders spoke at both events. Mayor Mamdani touted his accomplishments to roll out 2,000 daycare seats in low-income neighborhoods and fill 100,000 potholes in his first 100 days. He also announced New York City will open a city-owned grocery store in East Harlem by the end of his first term. This is Mayor Mamdani.
What he has been able to accomplish is extraordinary in these first 100 days of actually securing the 2K for 2-year-olds, this childcare, universal childcare, filling in these potholes, handling the storm, this like blizzard that came through, doing so many things, of actually like providing more housing and building for people who are transitioning from incarceration with actual services that they need, not just in name, but like in practice, that they are creating clinics for youth that are accessible. It's like doing this, building out the social safety net is what it takes in order to create a thriving society that makes it so people aren't as marginalized, that people actually have a chance to live a life that is full of dignity because they have more access to the resources that they need.
On that freezing January afternoon to more than 8.5 million New Yorkers, we will make no apology for what we believe. I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now!
Thank you,
on
Amy
YouTube.
Goodman.
Subscribe to the channel and...
Also with this, guys, I forget his name, who we beat, Viktor Orban, with his win, this is showing as well that we are starting to root out the gerontocracy, this idea about seniority of like, oh, however many years you've lived on the earth, that means how wise and knowledgeable you are. No, there are plenty of old people that clearly have led to the situation that we're in right now, that have like pretty much ruined the earth and its inhabitants. So we can blame them for a lot of shit. But this just goes to show how, like, not only is the far right losing power, that they are desperately clinging on to it. It shows that the US people in Europe, but all over the world, people do not appreciate US interference in their politics. Duh. And it also shows that these old boomers who are corrupt and destroying things and people, that they are starting to be kicked out of power. That's good. Okay, so moving along, I think I'm gonna have time for this. I just want to make sure. Okay. So moving along, Trump fired judges who blocked deportations of Rameessa Ozturk and Mohsen Madawi. This really goes to show that speaking out is something that the powers that be are very afraid of. When we use our voices, they are scared of people listening, even though they have all of these options. They have all of these levers of power at their disposal, how people just speaking out, like having conviction, talking about what they believe, that they are threatened by that. That goes to show how truly our voices matter, but how scared they are of thinking about this spreading and us moving as a collective.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. In immigration news, the Trump administration fired 6 more immigration judges on Friday in their efforts to reshape immigration policy and the immigration courts. two of the fired judges, Rupal Patel and Nina Froese, had each dismissed high-profile cases brought by the government against international students who advocated for Palestinian rights. Tufts student Rumeysa Öztürk and Columbia student Mohsen Madawi. Öztürk is a Turkish-born student who was studying at Tufts University after she wrote an op-ed in her student paper critical of the university's response to the student government's stance on Israel's war in Gaza. She was arrested off the street by masked ICE agents. Her student visa had been revoked by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Boston immigration judge Rupal Patel blocked Öztürk's deportation in January, saying the Homeland Security Department did not have enough evidence to deport her. Öztürk has since completed her doctorate in child development. Mohsen Madawi is a Palestinian green card holder arrested following his participation in campus protests at Columbia University in which he advocated for Palestinian rights. Massachusetts judge Nina Froese blocked his deportation after ruling in February DHS had not proven its case.
So judges doing the right
Unlike
thing
judges
are getting
in the
fired for
judicial
it.
branch, immigration judges are employees of the Justice Department and are hired and fired by the Attorney General. Around 100 immigration judges have been fired by the second Trump administration. Firings in previous administrations were rare. Under Trump, a record number of asylum claims have been denied, leading to a record number of deportation orders. For more, we're joined by two guests. Carmen Maria Rey Caldas is a former judge in New York Immigration Court, appointed in 2022 and fired last year without explanation. She's joining us in our Democracy Now! Studio, and joining us from Washington,
I'm glad we
longtime
actually get to hear
immigration
from one of
attorney
the
Cyrus
judges.
Mehta. He represents Columbia student Mohsen Madawi. Welcome you both to Democracy Now! Judge, let's begin with you. You were a judge in the immigration court here in New York for 3.5 years before you were fired. Can you respond to what has just taken place for people to understand how rare what is happening is?
The concept of procedural due process, the idea that you get to have a hearing in the United States, whether in immigration court or a criminal court or in federal court, and you have access to a neutral decision maker, is a bedrock principle of law. And I'm not the person to say that. I mean, this is Justice Scalia, who I believe last said that very, very forcefully while he was still alive. And the Supreme Court has recently kind of reiterated that principle in some of the Trump administration rulings regarding Venezuelan nationals. Despite that, the Trump administration has done its utmost to erode that principle by firing judges that it perceived as being opposed to the administration's stated goal to deport as many people as possible with the least amount of due process possible.
Let's bring in Cyrus Mehta. Can you respond to the firing of Judge Nina Froese, the immigration judge who ruled to dismiss the government's deportation case against your client, Mohsen Madawi? She's just been fired. Explain what happened in his case, arrested exactly a year ago tomorrow in Vermont. He was going in for the final stages of becoming a U.S. citizen into a Vermont hearing. He had that hearing, and then the immigration agents moved in. Explain how this firing of the judge will affect his case.
Yes, sure. My client's deportation was based on a document that was issued by Secretary Rubio indicating that his presence in the U.S. was contrary to our foreign policy. This document was not authenticated. It's an important document. It was being used to deport my client, who is a green card holder, and there was no basis to demonstrate that it was a genuine document. It was issued by Secretary Rubio. These are standard procedures in any court proceeding, including immigration court. The immigration judge correctly terminated the proceeding. We have no basis to know whether that decision caused her firing because she was on probation. We have no idea, but there's a strong inference that this decision may have resulted in her termination because she does not have a very liberal record with regards to granting asylum cases, for example. At this point of time, my client's case was terminated. The government has appealed to the Board of Immigration Appeals. It's independent of this judge's termination. The Board of Immigration Appeals will hear our appeal and could either dismiss the government's appeal or remand back to the immigration court. If the case gets remanded back to immigration court, we won't have the same judge. The firing of an immigration judge is very disturbing. 100 judges or more have been fired. It is egregious because non-citizens are not going to get due process, and they're going to be subject to the ruling of judges that are under pressure. And judges, even if they're employees of the Department of Justice, should be able to neutrally adjudicate cases without any fear of retaliation, regardless of how they rule. For instance, if you win the case before a judge, we don't want the judge to get fired. It makes a mockery of the justice system in the immigration courts.
In the case of
judges have a lot of power. Yes, go ahead.
In the case of Judge Patel and the case of Judge Froese, they were both presiding over these cases of the Tufts University graduate student, now Moussa Madawi, a Columbia graduate student. What do you think? First of all, who's being promoted in their place, and what can you do now? Because aren't, like Mohsen's case, in a federal court and an immigration court?
Yeah, that's right. So we don't know who's replacing these judges. Probably the government is hiring new judges that will be more aligned to the Trump administration's policies that are geared towards deporting non-citizens. We're going to do our job. We are going to continue to brief the issue. And if we win at the Board of Immigration Appeals, it's great. If the case gets remanded, we will continue to effectively brief the issue and even bring it into federal court if we have to. And just like every other respondent whose judge may have been terminated, non-citizens need to bring these issues up in their appeals.
I want to ask Judge Carmen, describe the environment these firings create among immigration judges, political pressure on judges, and what's the message being sent out?
You know, it's really interesting because the latest firings have received a lot of attention, in part because both of these judges were presiding over relatively high-profile cases. But judges make decisions over the lives of non-citizens, thousands of non-citizens across the country every day. And we make decisions supposedly based on the record before us, and only that, without undue influence from external sources. But we are still people, which means that when we wake up to a presidential announcement about how liberal judges federal judges need to be taken away from their jobs by Congress, how the Supreme Court is acting improperly when it disagrees with the president, when the executive branch of government fails to respect the independence of the Department of Justice and the courts, that trickles down. And we can't blind ourselves, because we're just people, to the fact that individuals who oppose the interpretation of law that is being advanced by the Trump administration are fired, when those who support the interpretation of law advanced by the Trump administration are promoted, whether or not that interpretation is actually correct and in accordance with the laws of the United States. And so people who are judges, who are just people who are trying to feed their children and keep going in the United States of America, have to weigh how much they want to keep their jobs when they decide cases. And that in itself is an unfair putting of weight on the balance of justice in courts.
Were you shocked when you were fired in August?
No.
You were in one of the most conservative immigration courts,
I was.
right?
I spent 2.5, nearly 3 years in Georgia at the Stewart Detention Facility, where I don't think that my grant rates or denial rates were any markedly different from those of my colleagues, in part because we were dealing with a detained population. And in a detained setting, as the Trump administration well knows, which is why it's putting so many immigrants in detention, people abandon their cases. The detention conditions are so horrific that people would rather just be deported. And so we had very high rates of removal. And then I was transferred to the New York Immigration Court shortly before the Trump administration.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video.
All right. Yeah, the intimidation of judges, just intimidation all around by this fascist regime is so ridiculous. Okay, so this is a little bit more on Trump deleting this picture that was created by this AI slop of him being Jesus Christ.
Most never see President Trump do: delete a controversial social media post. And yet, the president has done just that after sharing an image that depicted him as Jesus Christ.
I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. Only the fake news could come up with that one. I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor.
Now, the president posted this image on his Truth Social page, and shortly thereafter started getting some backlash from people who were typically supporters of his, including prominent evangelicals and figures on the right, including Riley Gaines, who's been a guest at the White House and questioned why the president would share that image in the first place.
That loser.
She wrote, "I cannot understand why he'd post this. Is he looking for a response? Does he actually think this?" It was only a few hours later that the president deleted that image that he had shared on Truth Social, one that he had posted in the hours after he had criticized the Pope online, calling the Pope too liberal after he spoke out against the United States' war in Iran. Now, the president did not delete his criticism of the Pope, but he did delete the one that made him look like he was Jesus Christ. Here's something you almost never...
All right. Okay, so moving right along. This is more information on Eric Swalwell.
We have breaking news just in. Congressman Eric Swalwell is suspending his campaign for California governor as he faces allegations of sexual assault. He made the announcement minutes ago on X, writing, quote, "I am suspending my campaign for governor. To my family, staff, friends, and supporters, I'm deeply sorry for mistakes in judgment I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegations that have been made, but that's my fight, not a campaign's." Well, clearly, the bottom fell out, and it was unsustainable for him to stay in the race. But he's motioning, he's staying in Congress, and he is going to fight these allegations.
Yeah, and we've been hearing from, I think, a lot of Democrats who have talked about the importance of walking the talk, right? And I think there has been like a sea change in this country about believing victims. And, you know, Eric Swalwell has even himself come out in the past and talked about the importance of believing victims when they come forward with their stories. And I think given the context of what has happened in this country on the Epstein files and the seriousness of the allegations and the leaders,
people abusing their offices of power,
step aside, there was no way for him to sustain this campaign.
He should resign
and I think it'll be
from
very
Congress.
interesting again, because you have a president in this country who has been accused of sexual misconduct for years, and he's always brushed it off. And I think it's always been important for Democrats that they walk the talk and they actually back up when they say the importance of believing victims and trying to get to the bottom of allegations like these. So
the whole thing just makes me very sad.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel very sad for the victims, that they've felt the need to come forward publicly. I think the fact that they haven't come forward publicly until now, I mean, even under cloak of anonymity, tells you how much is at risk for women who are put in this position, as these women alleged to have been. So the whole thing just makes me very sad. And I don't know. I hope that those who have been hurt, if indeed these allegations are true, get some sense of closure from all of this.
Yeah, I agree with your point entirely, Eamon, about just in this moment with the Epstein files and the fact that Swalwell and so many others have spoken out in support of the survivors. Yeah. The right thing for this Congress to do is to listen to survivors, to believe women and vulnerable people. And I think we'll find out pretty quickly, starting tomorrow, where things are headed on Capitol Hill here for him, but also 3 other members of Congress who are facing serious allegations of different nature.
Yeah, kick them out.
There you see them right there.
Yeah,
Corey Mills, Tony Gonzalez, Sheila McCormick there. Hers is of a financial nature, not a sexual assault or...
I think she was connected to Epstein as well.
Sexual-related crime. But I think at this point, so many voters in the country right now are just sort of disgusted with the lack of accountability. Yeah. And they want to see action. And it really doesn't matter so much if there's a D or an R in front of your name. I think people want to move forward, and they want fighters, but they want fighters with credibility, with honesty, and
a moral compass.
Who treat the people around them with respect.
Well, and hopefully this moment is going
is
to
stunning.
open up the floodgates when it comes to what have taxpayers been funding victims of congressional misconduct over so many years? Open up the vault, all settlements over many, many years. Let the public see, let the public know what money they paid out.
We had 2 very different interactions with members of Congress from the Democratic Party, 2 women, Pramila Jayapal and Madeline Dean, over this weekend, and they both had different answers as to whether or not Eric Swalwell should be expelled from Congress, right? And Madeline Dean's viewpoint, Congresswoman Dean's viewpoint was, let the process play out. He has a right to defend himself, and if that concludes with an expulsion, so be it. It was interesting to hear Congresswoman Jayapal say he should be expelled, or that she would vote for him to be expelled along with Tony Gonzalez. And you brought up a really interesting point about the political calculation and all of this, because it's a razor-thin margin in Congress.
They should be kicked out.
This is not a calculation that should be made when you are pursuing justice on behalf of victims.
But it has to be a factor for these politicians, right?
Exactly. So that's what I was going to say. It has to be a factor for how the Democratic Party, as well as the Republican Party, looks at these allegations and looks at which member of Congress they can dispense with while protecting their control over this Congress.
Because we'll have to see. I mean, even though there are 2 from each party right now, 2 of them are from the same state, which is controlled by a Republican, and so we'll have to see. You know, like, are they? If there are expulsions, will there be special elections? And if there is a concern about how the special elections would go, or if they would be slow walked in different states, how that would affect the calculus. I wish that wasn't a factor, but it will be. Yeah.
Getting more information on House expulsions.
And is co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MS Now political contributor. Joining me here in studio, MS Now Capitol Hill reporter
Ethics
Kevin
Committee
Fry,
to investigate.
and Julie Roginski is Democratic strategist and author of the Salty Politics newsletter on Substack. So there are bipartisan calls, as you know, Kevin, for Swalwell to step down. You actually had a conversation one-on-one with the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries. What did he tell you?
Yeah, so I mean, he's not being committal on exactly what his position is going to fall on this. He has come out, along with other top Democrats, saying he needed to drop out of the governor's race. And Swalwell, of course, has taken that step. But he's not calling, at least so far, for him to drop out of Congress. And so I asked him, I'm like, okay, square this circle. Why does it rise to the level that he needs to get out of this race, but at the same time he can stay in Congress? Here's some of that exchange.
Serious allegations that are best addressed not as a candidate in a political environment where all of us need to actually be focused on articulating a vision that is designed to push back against Donald Trump's extremism and lay out a case for how we are actually going to improve the lives of the American people without distraction.
Well, I mean, couldn't it be a distraction in Congress?
Will that include not funding Israel?
Certainly is not in a position to run for re-election at this point.
Which is kind of sidestepping the question, because obviously if he's running for governor at the same time, he can't be running for Congress, and so he's not doing both, and now it's seemingly not doing either. One thing to keep an eye on this week is that, and Jeffrey's told me this, they're going to be talking about this idea of, are they going to be censuring? Would they do expulsion? If there's a vote, what is he going to encourage his members to do? They have a meeting, as they do basically every week when they're in Washington, House Democrats. That's currently likely going to be on Wednesday morning, so we could have some idea of where the week is going coming out of that.
Julie, what does this do for Democrats? I mean, there are a lot of people asking the question, oh, this is serious enough that he can't run for governor, that he isn't morally on high ground to be governor, but he could stay in Congress?
Well, look, I spoke to one of the survivors.
He needs to be expelled
over the last several days, and she is prepared to testify under oath to the House Ethics Committee. The House Ethics Committee has said it's in their rules that if you have a sexual relationship with a staffer or somebody who's a direct report to you, this could lead to penalties up to and including expulsion. If she testifies, if the House Ethics Committee opens up an investigation, I assume they will, and she brings the evidence that she claims she has, and she brings her testimony, I don't see a way that he can stay. I will say that this could potentially be a solution for both Republicans and Democrats. As you said, there are 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats who are in a position right now to be expelled. If Jeffries gets together with the Speaker and they decide, okay, this is not going to reduce our equilibrium in Congress because it's 2 and 2, do it all in one resolution and get him out of there, that could potentially be a solution. I personally, having spoken to the survivor, believe that he not only should not be in Congress, he needs to really be looked into as to what he did in a criminal way. I mean,
which is what the Manhattan DA's office is looking at. But do you see that as a possibility? They just take them all down?
I mean, it's a complicated maneuver in terms of just how House procedure would follow in that sort of way. And part of it is there good faith belief between the Democrats and the Republicans that, okay, we do this one next and then we do this one? Like, will they actually follow through on what they're deciding to do? The other thing to keep in mind, as you mentioned, the Ethics Committee, is there is this question of precedent. And obviously the George Santos case is the most recent example of the expulsion mechanism. But if you do something before the Ethics Committee has released their report, like when is the lever pulled to actually expel someone on the allegation part, even if it is backed up with very dramatic and very compelling testimony, or is it once the Ethics Committee does their work? And keep in mind, the Ethics Committee can take months, years to actually produce anything.
Yeah, in an election season, Jake, does anybody want to drag this out?
Well, that's a difficult question. I don't think anyone wants to drag it out, but Mike Johnson has made the case repeatedly when it comes to Tony Gonzalez and other members under a cloud of ethics trouble that the Ethics Committee should render its opinion.
Same reason, right? For allegations of having some sort of sexual relationship with a staffer.
Yes, but by the way, that's not everybody in this bundle, right? Sheila Scherflis McCormick has non-sexual allegations against her, and she's actually the farthest along in the ethics process. I agree with Kevin that it would be very difficult to see Congress just go across the board and expel all of these folks, especially when several of them, again, have not been through the whole ethics process, no matter how obscenely bad some of these allegations are. And remember, 2/3 to expel someone from Congress. It's a privileged vote, so it would go.
The United States of America, where pedophiles and rapists, sexual abusers, fraudsters, all get to rule with impunity, have no consequences. It is the system acting as it was meant to insulate those from in power from accountability and to punish the people who are accusing them of wrongdoing.
To the floor regardless, but you need 2/3. You need only a simple majority to table an expulsion resolution or send it to committee. So the most likely scenario is probably that if an expulsion resolution comes up, that someone would try to send it to the Ethics Committee for consideration and try to start an investigation that way.
So then there is, Julie, obviously Swalwell was leading in the race for California governor, at least leading Democrat, right? A very messy race already. Now it's even more chaotic. A political columnist at the San Francisco Chronicle wrote this: if California Democrats are going to tear down signs and rename holidays and schools after learning more about an icon like Cesar Chavez, they sure as hell better not spare Swalwell, a white dude from suburban Dublin. So much for Democrats being the party that protects women. How much of that is the subtext to what we're seeing right now?
Look, I will say this. You had virtually every single person, I think actually all 21 people in California and elsewhere who endorsed Swalwell immediately over the last 3 days pulled their endorsement. His staff, both in Congress and in his campaign, came out and said, we don't think that he should continue his campaign. You had the speaker saying what he said to you, the leader saying what he said to you, but also saying earlier that he doesn't think that Swalwell should run for governor. So I would actually say that they've done a hell of a lot more than Republicans have done, either with Gonzalez or with Donald Trump, or looking into the Epstein files and why they haven't been released. I mean, this is not a partisan issue for me. This is something I do every day, work with survivors. So I will tell you right now that I don't care if Swalwell is a Democrat or a Republican. I think he needs to go. But the truth of the matter is a lot of Democrats agree with me. I will say this, though. I will say this directly to the Democrats who think this is some MAGA plant or this is some ploy by one of his opponents in the governor's race. Just stop. Just stop. You sound like crazy MAGA people who think that Donald Trump was set up by E. Jean Carroll and others. And I'm telling you right now, this is not a ploy. These people are legitimate. They have horrible stories. And once you hear them in detail, you will understand why this man does not deserve to be anywhere near Capitol Hill or the governor's mansion.
All right. I thought they would provide a little more context. Not that much. Okay. Moving along then. So this came out recently. So we had that weird press conference with Melania coming out and be like, I was not friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And we were like, where is this coming from? Why is this happening? Why are you doing this? And there was someone named Amanda Ungaro who gave a tweet or something on social media and was saying that she was going to reveal more connections to Epstein. So here's a little bit of background.
Melania Trump walked up to a podium this week and did something no First Lady has ever done. She denied knowing Jeffrey Epstein, unprompted, unscheduled, a surprise press conference, just to say, I was not his victim. I was not his participant.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors.
It
Give
shouldn't be
these
their
victims
responsibility.
their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record.
Washington didn't know what to make of it, but within hours, a verified account on X bearing the name Amanda Ungaro fired back with a public threat, claiming 20 years of proximity to the First Lady and promising to, quote, expose everything she knows. You haven't heard of Amanda Ungaro, but she says she's been in the room for 20 years. She's Brazilian, a model, and she was pulled into the American dream the same way Melania was by the same man, Paolo Zampoli, modeling agent, Trump loyalist, the man credited with discovering Melania, bringing her to America, and handing her quite literally to Donald Trump. Zampoli found Ungaro too, recruited her, brought her over. And for years, she says, she sat at the same table, the Mar-a-Lago table, the New Year's Eve table, the one with Donald and Melania at the head of it. She and Zampoli were together for years. They separated in 2023. But the memories, those she kept. Here's where it gets dark. Ungaro says that at 17 years old, she boarded Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, Paris to New York. Her agent, Jean-Luc Brunel, was with her. So were 30 other girls.
Who's another
Beautiful
creep.
And very young, she told Brazil's O Globo newspaper. I felt immediate discomfort and wanted to get off the plane. I sensed something was wrong, but I did not fully understand the abuse at the time. She doesn't accuse Epstein of assaulting her directly, but she calls herself a product of his machine, the modeling ecosystem he and Brunel built specifically to traffic in young women. Brunel is dead, Epstein is dead, but Ungaro is very much alive, and she's talking. Fast forward to 2025. Ungaro is arrested in Miami. The charge? Running an alleged unlicensed cosmetic surgery clinic. Botox, procedures, no license. And just like that, she's not just a defendant. She's a detainee. ICE picks her up. She spends more than 3 months in immigration detention. In September 2025, she asks a judge to just deport her. Send me back to Brazil. I'm done. And that should have been the end of it. Then Melania opened her mouth.
That's one of the reasons why, like, as that other judge on the Democracy Now! Headlines was talking about, one of the reasons why they keep all of these conditions in ICE concentration camps, let's be clear, because that's what they are, why the conditions are so deplorable and horrific to be living under, is that they are trying to get people to want to be deported or that they die in custody rather than fighting their cases because they don't want to be in detention for any longer. It's fascist.
A verified account. Blue
and
tick.
Disgusting.
Active
Naomi Campbell.
since December 2025. Somewhere in Latin America. The name, Amanda Ungaro. The target, the First Lady of the United States. The message, hello Melania, I was around you for 20 years. You knew I was inside ICE, and you know what hurts after all this time? I stayed close to your family, your mother, your father, at events, at everything else. Not because of you, because of them. So shut your mouth when speaking about me. Because I will expose everything I know. No vague accusations, no attorney-drafted statement, no carefully worded press release. Just a woman, a name, and a threat. Nobody asked Melania Trump to hold that press conference. No formal accusation had been filed, no lawsuit, no congressional hearing, no subpoena. She walked up to that podium on her own. And a woman who says she spent 20 years inside that world. At those tables, at those parties, beside that family, watched it happen from somewhere in Latin America. And decided she had something to say. The question isn't whether Amanda Ungaro can prove what she knows. The question is, why did the First Lady of the United States feel the need to deny it first? That answer? We're still waiting for it.
Okay. Awkward ending to that. Moving right along then. Okay. This is by the Jacobin magazine. J.D. Vance delivers the kiss of death to Viktor Orban. love. He really is a bad luck charm. So we need to send him all over the world.
I stand here today
where there are fascist strongholds.
Because President Trump and I stand with Europe, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with the man who has done more to defend those values than anyone else, Viktor Orban.
Tonight, Hungary's Viktor Orban has conceded defeat in what he called a, quote, painful election. Voters turned out in record numbers to end his 16-year increasingly authoritarian rule.
I stand here today because President Trump and I stand with Europe, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with the man who has done more to defend those values than anyone else, Viktor Orban.
Tonight, Hungary's Viktor Orban has conceded defeat in what he called a, quote, painful election. Voters turned out in record numbers to end his 16-year increasingly authoritarian rule.
I stand here today.
All right. Moving right along. Okay, so there is a second blockade that we saw Amy Goodman go over in Democracy Now! With those headlines, but I wanted to get more of a perspective from Hassan and see what he had to say, because this is just idiotic what's happening. Trump being like, you can't do a blockade, we're gonna do it. It's like so childish and stupid. It also is making the US look extremely weak. Everything, the soft power stuff, and with this as well.
To blockade ships entering or exiting Iranian ports, America has decided they're going to add a secondary blockade to the Iranian one, which is fucking nutty. Yeah, there it is from Chinese social media. Iran toll, U.S. toll. Yeah, break an enemy blockade by blockading their blockade. Don Zhu. You can't get outsmarted if you don't think. Never let him know your next move. And the best possible way to never let your enemy know your next move is if you personally don't know your own next move. That's the Don Zhu method. That's Jay Pondam, baby. I love this shit, okay? Why do I love this shit? Because what's the main reason why Iran's toll system is a major burden from an American perspective? Obviously, number one, it shows that Iran actually has a full military dominance over this choke point, the strategic choke point that's very important for 20% of all the world's energy supply to flow through. Impeding on that in any way, shape, or form, or exercising control over that directly contradicts why America is supposed to be the hegemon, right? That's one. But the other reason is because that strategic choke point being controlled by Iran and stopping most of the tankers that would normally transit through freely is destroying the global energy markets.
Exactly.
And is going to lead to unprecedented shortages and also inflation.
How was your weekend?
As I've said already, oil and gas is a global commodity that everyone needs, and there is inelastic demand. So therefore, if one place doesn't have oil, then it impacts the global market prices across the board. So for Donald Trump to turn around and decide, oh, you're doing a blockade? Well, guess what? We're doing a blockade on top of your blockade is only going to make the crisis worse. Because if Iran is saying, oh, we'll let all the ships go through as long as they pay us a toll, and then America turns around and says, nah, we're blocking them. It's incredible. It is unbelievably stupid.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievably stupid thing for him to do. It's hilarious as well. It's a very funny.
Interesting.
It's a very funny move. Very dumb move, but also very funny move. Respect to Donald Trump. Really. Indeed.
Is
Trump's
that nice
Hormuz
when
play
you
is a classic jujitsu
go
move.
out for your
if the
weekend?
Strait gets blocked, America will be the one doing the blocking, not the RGC.
Yeah,
God,
it's
these
not
guys
as
are
busy.
So stupid. They're so stupid. Look at the
Lots of
conservatives.
work.
The blockade always made more sense than seizing Carg Island. It stops Iran's exports, its revenues. It's a counterpoint to their closing of the straits. They may attack Gulf oil facilities, but it puts greater pressure on Iran, also puts great pressure on China to pressure Iran. Conservatives last week, Trump is doing an amazing job opening the Strait of Hormuz. Conservatives this week, Trump is doing an amazing job blockading the Strait of Hormuz. F***ing amazing. Trump announcing that he's going to beat Iran at his own game by blocking the Hormuz even harder.
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.
Who could forget the classic jiu-jitsu move?
Finally,
when
some
your
grass
opponent is
to touch
beating your
this
ass,
spring.
you
Much
start
needed.
punching
Oh, that's
yourself in the face
nice.
instead, and you go, "Ha ha! I wanted my ass beat to begin with, sir." That's what this is. Classic jiu-jitsu move. Okay, that's
the kind of the opposite of what's been happening in Utah. We definitely are needing more rain so that we actually can fill the reservoirs and stuff. But I'm glad that you have some grass. That's nice. How are the cats?
what happens when you're engaging in
Is
in
Ghibli
hand-to-hand
still
combat. And
shedding
you're
a
doing
lot?
jujitsu, okay, and your opponent is choking you. So you go, "Well, I'm holding my breath. I'm holding my breath myself." Ha ha! 12D chess. Never let him know your next move, baby. Ah, you didn't choke me. I choked myself. Joke's on you. I think he's joining the other team. That's JD Pondon, baby.
Yeah,
Put some
that is
respect on
what
his
it is.
name. Put some respect on it. You can't fire me. I quit. That's always the last desperate attempt by Donald Trump. Whenever things are going south, he goes, "Ha!
Figuratively.
I did myself."
You
Okay,
mean, like,
joke's on
green
you.
space.
I wanted the
And I had
situation to be worse.
trees.
Now, obviously, there are some
Amazing.
negative
I love
consequences
that.
here, and
Just
there
not
will
grass.
be some limitations to what Trump
Yet.
can and can't do. We shall
Okay,
see if he
we're
actually
staying
follows through on
tuned.
this, because almost the entirety of Iranian tankers are being shipped to China. So will Donald Trump take a stance against
Son and
Chinese
daughter might
flag
like the
tankers
grass.
that
Aw,
are
I
delivering
didn't know you
oil and
have
gas
kids.
to China? Remember, even before
Oh, wait. Are you talking
the-
about
the-
your
the
cats?
last 42 days, I believe it was
Yes.
80% of all Iranian oil and gas that was directly going
Same.
to China. Iranian oil is not a major part
is what
of Chinese
the kids
oil. Now,
of
that number,
millennials
that percentage has
are
obviously
our
increased
pets.
since no ships are
Because we
transiting
can't
through the
afford
strait
to have
as it
kids.
stands currently. But
Not
most
like I
of
want
Iranian
them to
oil
begin
was going
with.
to China anyway. So is he gonna start duking it out with China? Because that feels kind of dumb, especially right now when America is at its weakest point globally, both with its soft power utterly destroyed by Donald Trump, weirdly enough, but also its hard power capabilities have taken a significant hit by a country that is much smaller
Neither-
than China,
yeah.
by a country that is
I'm like,
much
I
less
don't even know how
powerful
long the
than China.
planet's
China
gonna
is
last.
a nuclear country, a country with
We're
nuclear
not gonna
arms.
have
China is the
nuclear
manufacturing
warfare or
engine
something.
of the entire planet. You can't really do what you have failed to do to Iran.
People who are like, I want to have
a
another
country
kid,
like
or I want to have a
China.
kid right now. I'm
China
like,
could much
you're
easily,
very confident
with
in the
much
future
ease, punish
that I
America
do
and
not
maybe even punish the rest
share
of the
this
globe if they wanted to, without even the threat of nukes, obviously. Regarding Trump's threat/decision, Trita Parsi says,
Yes.
to impose a naval blockade on
I know. I'm trying to work on getting like a craft cam so that I can have this up. So I'm not just like mysteriously like doing like interpretive dancing with my hands. I'm making a bracelet. I've been making bracelets for like the flags of countries that the US is imposing all of this violence and death. Like, so this right here are the colors for the Venezuelan flag. And I'm trying to figure out a way to sell them so that we can donate the proceeds to like mutual aid in these countries. But I'm working on that. We'll see how far I get with that. It's a work in progress. But in the meantime, I like to be doing stuff with my hands. I do knit as well, though. We still need to do a craft day. Once I get my craft camera up and running.
Iran, color me a skeptic. Taking more oil off the market, particularly the only oil that is now getting out of the Persian Gulf, will drive oil prices further up. And the paper price of oil will get closer to the actual price, which should be around $150 per barrel. So that literally, again, you can't do that. The whole reason why you wanted to open the Strait of Hormuz was because of what's going on in the oil markets. Okay, so that's incredible move by JD Pandon. Brilliant, sir. He is truly the real revolutionary, the real green energy champion that this world needed. Many of you don't understand. He doesn't think in decades. He thinks in generations. He thinks in centuries.
I don't
the
know.
Trumpian mind
I
cannot
mean,
be
I'm
comprehended. He is Mr. Eco-terrorism.
You feel
It turns
so
out
disempowered with
y'all
all
have
the
only
bullshit
watched
happening.
movies
That's
about
like,
how to blow up a pipeline. Trump is quite
how do
literally
we
doing that.
actually
Okay,
get people
so who's
some
the real
helpful
woker
resources?
now, bitch?
I don't know.
Donald Trump is
We'll
forcibly
see
creating an environment
how I
for that
accomplish
renewable
this.
energy transition for every country.
TBD,
Respect,
I guess.
Put some respect on his name. He is the GOAT. Don Zoo. So, a dramatic increase in inflation in the U.S. will
Don
ensue.
Zoo.
Avoiding this is precisely why Trump was
Instead
stuck
of
in a position where he had
Sun
no
Tzu.
escalatory options out of this conflict before the ceasefire. He still
It's
doesn't.
so
Stopping
stupid.
tankers carrying Iranian oil wouldn't just be an escalation vis-a-vis Iran, but also against the countries that are buying Iranian oil, which includes China, India, and other Asian countries. I doubt Trump is ready for that escalation, particularly given the upcoming summit in Beijing. This is true. This is also true for punishing countries that have negotiated a toll with Iran for the Straits. That includes Pakistan, which hosted the negotiations. That's probably secondary. I don't think America gives a about Pakistanis being mad at them. Sorry. No disrespect. I know I'm a little, I know I come across a little jealous because Pakistan was
That's
the table.
nice.
Okay.
I'm
As
trying.
opposed to Turkey, which is the normal position, right? But that's not, I'm just being serious about it. I
Oh,
think America
yeah,
is very
the video
selfish
on Melania.
and also doesn't care about,
Yeah,
Pakistan's interests
I know,
at all.
I'm-
Number 4. The
I'm
naval
glad
blockade escalation
on
will make
Melanie.
the closing of the Red Sea more likely
Yeah,
by the
exactly.
Houthis.
I'm
would
glad
take another
that it's gotten some
12% of global oil
traction.
flow off the market. We would now be
It's,
looking at oil
I think, a
at
matter of just
around
kind of
$200 per barrel.
patient,
There are
just kinda
9 or
letting
so days
things
left of the ceasefire, since neither side has
roll out
explicitly
how
stated
they
talks
will
won't
and just
resume,
keeping on
or that the
posting
ceasefire
stuff.
is dead and over
But
with.
thank
All
you,
these
that's
moves
so
should be treated
nice.
as tactics and threats.
And thank you
within
for subscribing.
negotiations. It
Here
wouldn't be
and
surprising
there.
if these threats are walked back soon, perhaps before markets open on Monday and a new round is announced. However, there is time for brinksmanship and there is time for serious negotiations. If the U.S. truly was insisting on zero enrichment in Islamabad, which was not Trump's red line at first, but rather Israel's, then the next talks will be rendered a failure, just as the talks in May 2025 were killed by Trump shifting to the Israeli red line. Still, I don't think that necessarily will lead to a return to war. A more likely scenario is a new non-negotiated status quo in which Tehran retains control over the Straits but doesn't get any sanctions relief while the U.S. pulls out of the war, and the question becomes whether Israel will continue the war on its own. This is a likely scenario, which, of course, in the interim, will allow Iran to gear up with the latest and greatest Chinese technology as
debating
well,
whose
from
voiceover to go
manpads
through to catch up on the Scarlet
anti-air defense
Pimpernel.
systems and the like, and therefore will
There are
present
probably
a
a
much
lot
more
of
competent
versions.
force that is capable of defending
And probably,
its own
like, some
territory
good
from aerial bombardment
actors,
campaigns
too.
that Israel could conduct.
You should
Without
let me know what
American
you
help,
land on.
Not really sure how much
Or are there some
Israel
weird
will be able
ones,
to defend
too?
itself.
I'm
Don't
so
really
curious.
see that happening, even though Israel is crazy like that. China is not sending any air defense to Iran. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I know that the Bloomberg report is questionable, but we'll see about that. You never know. You never know. Esfandiar, this guy's really good. The only explanation I can come up with for Trump's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is that he desperately wants the U.S. to be cut in on the future toll revenue. A few things to consider. By definition, a blockade does not reopen the strait. Iran had already blockaded itself by closing the strait to most vessels in the first place. The oil exports Iran was sustaining do not create significant revenues because of U.S. sanctions. If revenues were the issue, Trump would have canceled General License U ahead of the April 16th deadline and issued new sanctions targeting Iran's Chinese customers. Arguably, the blockade announcement puts more pressure on the Gulf states than it does on Iran. No Gulf country had called for a blockade, and I suspect the announcement came as a complete surprise. The terms that Trump will insist upon to end his blockade and the terms that Iran will insist upon to reopen the strait may be similar.
I'm thinking
Now, two
about
countries are trying to
making
demonstrate their control over
a
the strait,
channel in
leaving
the
GCC
Discord
and
for
Iraq
recipes
in a compromised position.
that
The
you
chairman of the
can
Israeli
drop
Parliament
some of your
National Security
recipes in.
Committee and a member of Netanyahu's coalition.
Selfishly for me,
well, I guess he
but
deleted his
also
statement, so we don't
for other
know.
people.
But I think
'Cause you
his,
eat so much good
the
food.
attitude from the Israeli side is, dude, enough yapping. Come on, ceasefire over. Let's go fucking bomb Iran. That's what the statement was that he deleted hastily. But I can totally see that being the overarching sentiment in the Israeli Knesset, right? Because they did not want the ceasefire to take place. They tried to spoil it by doing a heinous act of terror against Lebanon, killing 300 Lebanese civilians in a matter of 10 minutes. And then they never really stopped, right? They never really stopped with their ambition. America was like, yo, keep it cool, keep it chill. Yeah, this guy, chairman of the Knesset National Security Committee, Zvika Fohel, mocks Trump. Donald, if you have to shoot, shoot. Don't quack. And then posts a duck. Oh, also, the speaker of the Islamic Republic of Iran's parliament, Ghalibaf, who was at the meetings, said, enjoy the current pump figures with the so-called blockade. Soon you will be nostalgic for $4 to $5 gas.
This is such a shit show.
Station near the White House. God damn, dude. Again, they're farting on us, okay? Straight up,
What?
they're farting on us. 100%.
What does that even mean? I guess that's what it means. Farting
We're
on
going
us.
meat for meat, ban for ban on the meme side, and they got a whole lot more meat than we do.
There's a wave of voice
Their meat
actors.
goes a long way in comparison to
a
our
Scottish
meat.
man
They
from
got all
Breaking
the
Bad?
Kubernetes. We got
That's
none.
cool.
They got the Lego music videos, but it's not alone. It's not enough. They got the
I love that.
the Iranian.
Hey, I haven't
ministries,
seen
the
Breaking
Iranian
Bad all the
embassies
way
all around
through,
the world
but I've
farting
seen
on us.
most of it.
And then you got
I'm trying to
Ghalibaf
think of who has
himself
a Scottish
hiring
accent
some
in that.
Zoomers deciding to go meat for meat.
What we cannot
I
allow
don't
is
think
for
I've
Iran
seen
to
that
exercise
part.
sole control over the strait, charging tolls where it derives all the revenues, because that would also eliminate any economic pressure on the Iranian regime. What I've argued is we ought to adopt the principle that the Strait of Hormuz needs to be open for all or closed to all, including Iran. And what I've recommended with two of my colleagues,
People in the
Neil
chat.
Ferguson and Phil Zelikow, is that we create a new Strait of Hormuz
Gaze of
commission or
Hormuz.
authority
That's me.
that would essentially
Gaze of
govern the
Hormuz.
operation of the strait.
Gay
Perhaps you
whore.
could have a fee
Present.
charge, but then it would be distributed, not just to Iran, but to the other, half dozen or so local countries.
But not the strait.
Might be some degree of enforcement or support
Yeah.
from the countries in Europe and Asia that are most dependent on the passage through the strait.
Someone said
I would bring China
America
into the,
fart receiver.
equation
That is
because,
so
It
gross.
has influence, obviously, in Trump. But we need some type of a governing authority that dilutes Iran's ability to decide who gets to use the strait. And if we can't get that, David, I would favor a blockade. Again, open for all or closed to all.
This is so unbelievably stupid. Richard Haas, former head of the Council on Foreign Relations, says Washington is not negotiating from strength and that Iran has emerged from the war with greater leverage. On Hormuz, he suggests Washington should tell Iran the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all or closed to all, propose the International Governing Commission, including Iran and Gulf states. This is what Trump tried to do. Remember when Donald Trump was like tweeting or truthing, maybe we will control the Strait of Hormuz with Iran, right? Which, for the record, was already a massive L. Because like the idea that you are going to beg Iran to cut you in on the toll collection implies that you've already given up, that Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz. That statement was unbelievable from Trump. When he said that, that was an admission of defeat. And I covered it as such.
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
They presented that
Sounds
as the
like
alternative,
surrender.
And the Iranians, to their credit, recognizing the unbelievable leverage they have currently,
Iran has also been
At
doing
least
some great.
That's what it seems like. They straight up were like,
smearing
no, actually,
propaganda
you're not getting a piece
against
of
Trump.
the toll collection. No, it's
With all, like,
we're
their
controlling
Lego
the strait.
videos.
We'll open it to
They're
all,
very
but
accurate.
We will continue collecting fees. The problem here is they already do control the Strait of Hormuz. You either
Hello.
reopen it militarily or you reopen it through the process of diplomacy. And if America is not going to, talk the talk, then they have to walk the fucking walk. This kind of bullshit about, oh, we're adding a separate blockade on top of the pre-existing Iranian toll, it's not going to work. Not only are you actually positioning your naval assets, for the record, closer to Iranian missiles, right? Because there's that element as well. Like now you're what? Moving you're repositioning your naval assets within striking distance of Iran? Okay, good luck. That's number one. And number two, what are you going to do? Fight against China? It's an unbelievably stupid move. And last but not least, you don't get to actually enforce any control over the actual Iranian choke point. And on top of that, oil prices skyrocketed.
Is this the longest he's gone without using the soundboard?
The Strait of Hormuz?
I think
anyway.
so.
Yeah, just 2 days
As
ago,
far
Trump
as
said
I've
Iranians
seen,
were begging to make
when
a
he
deal,
actually
and
is
Iran had
around
no
it.
military capabilities left. Yet Iran is choosing not to make a deal and explicitly choosing to go back to war. Not really the move of someone desperate and without military. What this shows me is America wants a deal. Iran is fine with continuing the war, and Israel definitely doesn't want a deal. So if America wants a deal and Israel doesn't want a deal, and you don't get a deal, what does that tell you? That Israel is straight up controlling the entire conversation here on the American side. That's it. It is undeniable that we are placing Israel's idiotic goals ahead of our own, ahead of the rest of the world's interests. Do you think the rest of the world gives a fuck if Iran collects a toll? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they don't like it. $2 million in additional funds given directly to Iran. But it is the most manageable way out of this. Instead of trying to get America to pay reparations, you get the entire world to pay reparations to Iran for America's spectacular quagmire. Headline in the IRGC-affiliated Fars news agency, Trump joins Team Iran. I've legitimately never heard of a more insane, designed to backfire policy under this administration maybe ever. Not only attempting to blockade Iranian ships, but any ships that goes to the Strait of Hormuz by paying the toll. I do not foresee this. He said that it starts. CENTCOM says tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern is when the blockade starts. I think Trump goes back on this right before market open, maybe. Like, I just can't see this. I just do not see how this continues. I can't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Trump is that guy because he is nutty. But all signs point to him, pulling out of that. You're wrong. Think like a stupid. I mean, I am thinking like a stupid. I'm trying to think like a stupid, but this is just like, there's levels to this stupid shit. Okay? There's levels to this stupid shit. Him saying he's going to do this blockade is already stupid shit. Him actually enforcing the blockade, well, that's stupid beyond comprehension. Like, that is a new level of stupid that has been unlocked. Iran Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf responds to Trump, if you fight, we fight. And if you come with reason, we will deal with reason. We will not succumb to any threat. Let them test our will once again so we can give them an even greater lesson. Once again, I feel like these guys don't understand that the people that they're talking to there, Ghalibaf and the legal counsel representative and Arakshi, are the ones that want to negotiate. Most of the people who actually control the levers of power in Iran currently are not those people. They want to keep going. They, understandably, don't feel as though they've dealt a significant enough blow to both Israel and the global markets. They want to keep blowing shit up. You got the 25-year-old Hormuzers sitting around in this mosaic system in a fucking bunker for the past 40 days, lobbing Shahed drones nonstop, thinking, all right, give me the fucking go ahead. I'm going to hit that button again. Clearly, they're like, I'm going to Hormuz. I'm going to fucking Hormuz. I will die if I don't Hormuz right now. That's it. They are clearly invested in continuing until there is sufficient military deterrence that has been established. Iran and Thailand, the Thailand embassy says, the new move from Trump against our country is so comical that we don't even have a meme for it. So Trump is helping Iran now? Yes.
Going to Hormuz,
the
it's
U.S.
a
foreign
verb
policy
now.
establishment supports Trump collapsing the global economy. Strategic defeat has made the U.S. ruling classes insane. They'll drag us down with them rather than have their beloved empire take the L. Okay, Trump is now a vessel for the foreign policy blob that he ran against. Dennis Ross, former negotiator, says the blockade always made more sense than seizing Carg Island. It stops Iran's exports. Like, they literally went from Trump is going to reopen the blockade, reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He's going to do it with our military might. We got our hardest dicked Marines coming in. How are we going to do this? I don't know. Maybe we'll take Carg Island. Maybe we'll take other islands. How will we do that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll do it somehow. Okay. Their dicks are hard. They're ready to go. They're locked and loaded. They've been eating the best crayons that are readily available, not available to regular commercial consumers. These crayons that these hard dick Marines are eating are basically Blue True crayons. Their dicks are hard. Their weapons are locked and loaded. They're ready to rape and pillage. Except that hasn't happened. Because it's virtually impossible to pull through on an operation like that without suffering significant casualties, tremendous casualties. So much so that even Donald Trump is not pushing for it. He's saying that he wants to do this, but he's clearly hasn't, done it, right? And instead, this is the new meta. Oh, you put a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz? Well, guess what? I'm going to put a blockade on your blockade. Leaning into the offense to begin with, leaning into the damage that the blockade is doing to the global energy markets, and only worsening that crisis in our own hands. I'm going to piss off every single motherfucker. I'm going to make the Gulf scream. I am going to make it so that the Gulf never deals with the United States of America again. I'm going to make it so that all of the Asian countries that we have developed security cooperative agreements with suffer energy grid collapses, and they will lean into China, and they will also never work with the United States of America again, absolutely gutting the security umbrella and the defensive perimeter that we've created around China. We're going to render that into nothing, okay? We're going to turn it into dust. I'm going to do that shit because I'm fucking crazy. That's what Don Zhu is doing. That's what JD Pandon is doing. Respect JD Pandon. He is a Maoist third worldist. We got 30 minutes of oil markets open, by the way. Who knows how they will react to this? We got the Maria Bartiromo thing. All right, let's hear what Richard Haas has to say. On Hormuz, he suggests that Washington tell Iran the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all, closed to all. He came up with this brilliant idea. Trump leaned into it. Crucially, Haas says if Iran refuses, the U.S. should consider blockading the Hormuz at the Gulf of Oman to stop Iranian oil exports. His view, Washington should not accept Iran's sole control over Hormuz, but also cannot realistically exclude Iran from the strait. Haas says the war has made a return to pre-war status quo impossible, and the U.S. has lost the war in a strategic and political sense. Separately, he calls on Trump to pressure Israel to stop what he describes as a discretionary war in Lebanon. Knock it off, he suggests Trump tell Netanyahu. Trump, of course, is only listening to the first part of this conversation and deciding to lean into that, and not the second part of the conversation that requires him to literally tell Israel to
because
knock
if
it
you
off.
say, "Oh, please
Trump
don't do that," Netanyahu, he's going to stop.
He's like doing whatever Israel wants. Is a question that if you were to ask me, like, I don't know, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I'd be like, dude, come on, it's bullshit, right? I'm not gonna lie. At this point, it is so unsustainable and so transparently idiotic what Trump is doing at the behest of Israel, like so clearly that I'm no longer gonna sit here and act like that's not a concern. Okay, I don't know what the is going on. This goes far beyond boomer philo-Semitism, far beyond like loyalty, ideological loyalty to Zionism. It's obviously completely outside of the realm of like American foreign policy and its interests, like converging or diverging with Israel's. I mean, paired up with the whole like Melania statement, it does kind of feel like Israel is just, teasing a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I can't. It is truly, truly insane what Trump is doing right now. It doesn't make any sense. What Trump should be doing right now is a strategic retreat away from the region, lean into whatever Iran's demands are, and then saying, look, we up. Like we definitely
because he's gonna do that.
We took an L, it's fine.
Historically, he's known to admit when he's fucked up,
and we're gonna double down on our ambitions in our own backyard, right? Like that kind of thing, the Don Road doctrine. Like, look how easy it was with Venezuela, because this is like this doesn't make any sense. This is so crazy. This is so much worse than Vietnam. Like as far as like how big of a defeat this is, how public of a defeat this is, what kind of impact this has had globally, because Vietnam was in Vietnam, right? And Cambodia, Laos, but overall it was like over there, it didn't have this major impact on the rest of the globe. This is such a different and way more public defeat than I don't think many Americans fathom. Like I think a lot of Americans are just sleepwalking through this process. They always do.
We already know this. Americans are ignorant, selfish, and dumb. And largely this is because of propaganda. Being in the heart of empire, where so many schools over the years, the education has gotten worse and worse, and that has been ensured by politicians and all of these like parental rights people who are determined not to actually talk about real history, where it is in the benefit of the establishment that we are ignorant, selfish, and dumb. It falls into the capitalist brainwashing, and it's really sad, honestly, to see how little so many people care about, you know, the president's genocidal threats, what he's doing in Iran, that when all of this stuff is happening so far away from the physical landmass of the US, it allows people to just get endlessly bloodthirsty and warmongering and be like, oh yeah, it's like happening to these brown Muslims overseas. And it's like, there's a lot of Islamophobia that is contributing to this, racism, clearly, but also like this American exceptionalism where people are like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Like, no one can defeat America. Are you sure about that? Because it seems like America's defeating America single-handedly.
Totally oblivious to exactly what has taken place in the last 40 plus days. You obviously in this community have seen it. You've heard my commentary on it. You have experienced it in real time. But most Americans, like if you talk to your coworkers, I feel like they probably don't fully grasp how bad things are. Yeah, I don't think Americans understand how much of a crisis this is around the world. They're crying about gas prices. Meanwhile, the rest of the world has like 1 to 2 months max. Yeah, I don't like, I think Americans look at this and go, oh man, we're taking a big fat L at the gas pumps, right? Taking a big fat L at the gas pumps. This sucks. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're fighting terrorists or whatever, right? Like, I think the average American's assessment is like, I don't know, they're brown people. They're scary. They say death to America. Trump is them up. And maybe we're not like, you know, maybe we haven't achieved our like victory condition.
Can you blame them?
Like, my gas prices are bad. I don't want him to do this. And now I'm increasingly believing that, you know, he's doing this just for Benjamin Netanyahu, just for Israel. I think that's like the median voter's attitude on this issue. What is actually taking place, however, is a spectacular blow to what has made America the global hegemon. Without the American Navy, without free commerce and free trade taking place on all seas across the board, guaranteed by the American naval assets, America's hegemonic status is called into question. That's number one. Number two, petrodollar is taking a major hit here, which has played a formative role in when tied with the naval assets and forcibly opening all the seas, is the reason why the dollar is the global reserve currency, which has given America tremendous benefits, right? We can dominate our enemies when we see fit. We can design
running out of
tremendous sanctions and cripple entire markets, cripple entire countries like we've done so to Iran, many others. All of that goes away. When all of that goes away, what does America have? It's just a fucking belligerent country with a bunch of nukes, with 800 military bases that look a lot like 800 separate military incursions. This is something that I have talked about quite a bit when America was deciding to move away from soft power and going only in the direction of hard power. But I never thought that it would be this bad. I didn't realize that like defense contractor bloat and you know, American power projection, force projection capabilities would be this diminished in comparison to a country that we've been able to destroy economically, right? I don't think Americans understand what that world looks like. I don't think they recognize that. I don't even think most Americans understand that we're losing and getting our ass beat in the Strait of Hormuz by a country that we've designed as an enemy for no reason. We're in it.
Yep.
We don't recognize it. Most people don't. It will get so much worse. I'm telling you right now, it's going to get so much worse.
Yeah.
Trump, we are mobilizing our ships, and we have a huge fleet that we're moving to the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade
because we
will
also
be similar
have
to what
these
we did to
fascist
Venezuela, but at a
idiots
higher level. I
that
want everything.
won't
They have
acknowledge
no cards. Barr says Trump joined
when
Team
they've
Iran, the
been
U.S. president, by threatening a
beaten.
military blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Dash analysts' last hope for a drop in oil prices. Senator Mark Warner, I don't understand how blockading the Strait is somehow going to push the Iranians into opening it. I don't see the connection here. IRGC Navy Command says any misstep by the enemy in the Strait of Hormuz will place them within a zone of mortal danger. Remember, that threat is also very real. They are coming into striking distance as well. So in order to implement a blockade, they have to be in striking distance of Iranian ballistic munitions and Iranian drones. So I don't even know how they are going to do this without having their naval assets get bombed and experience laundry fires. American destroyers will start having laundry fires over and over again. It wasn't enough that we lost so many aerial assets, so many fixed position radars. Now we got the Navy to contend with. Now we're going to lose naval assets too. Fuck it, you know?
All right. There's that. Okay. Amazing. This is direct action that I want to learn more about. The employee burning down a warehouse.
911, occupied emergency. I want to report a fire. I don't know if it's been reported already.
A suspect is in custody after allegedly starting a fire at an Ontario, California warehouse. The Ontario Fire Department responded to the call at a 1.2 million square foot facility operated by Kimberly-Clark, a distribution warehouse for paper products. The Ontario Fire Department said the blaze reached a 6-alarm response and required almost 200 firefighters, 20 engine companies, 15 truck companies, 2 ambulances, 17 chief officers, and 3 investigators to contain. 29-year-old Shamel Abdul Karim, an employee of NFI Industries, a third-party distribution company for Kimberly-Clark products, has been identified as a suspect in the fire and has been taken into custody. This comes after a video was reportedly posted on Abdul Karim's private Facebook page showing how the incident began. In the video, a man said, "You know, if you're not going to pay us enough to afford to live, at least pay us enough not to do this," as he lights a package of toilet paper on fire.
What do you
In
expect
2 other videos, the man says,
when
"All
you
had to do
refuse
is
to
pay us enough
pay
to
people
live,
enough?
And there goes your inventory, as pallets of products burned in the background." The Ontario Police Department says they are, quote, reviewing and working to authenticate the footage as part of the ongoing investigation. There were no reported injuries to responders or anyone else in the building. Abdul Karim was charged with felony arson of a structure and aggravated arson. He is being held without bail at West Valley Detention Center. This is Inside Edition Digital.
American hero. Truly. Okay, I saw this from Think Peace Tribe. I really love his content. As the cost of living continues to increase, there will also be an increase in more warehouse fires. And then I saw this as well, which is extremely true. Genuinely more effective than any No Kings protest, the corporation and the insurance company will take a hit to the tune of millions of dollars, all because of one overexploited worker. Now imagine what more than one overexploited worker could do. Yes, exactly. AI data centers. A breath of fresh air amongst the frog costumes and 90s aerobic dance routines of all of these, like No Kings protests. People need to understand that the point of a protest is to challenge. Yes, that you have to have demands and they have to actually feel pressure, not amusement. Hot take. People are more important than toilet paper. If the bread is moldy and the circuses are boring, something's gotta give. Recently heard this quote, "Crime is a rational response to impossible circumstances." Yeah, and what we are considering crime. Because if we are thinking that it is more of a crime to burn that down when workers are experiencing all of this bullshit, that they don't have enough pay to actually live and support themselves, while all of their salaries are being siphoned by CEOs and the ruling class, the 1%, the Epstein class, that they care more about their products than they do about human beings. But this is going to keep happening, and it should keep happening, because people can only put up with conditions for so long. Something that we were reading the other day, Voltaire. Voltaire was talking about how as material conditions get a little bit better for people, this is often when revolution happens, when people rise up, is that after they have been exploited for so long and are oppressed by these horrible conditions, once there is like a certain lift in the conditions and people realize that they don't have to be in those conditions, that there is a possibility for living in a different world where they aren't as miserable and exploited, that then they revolt. And I'm wondering when that happens in the US. Okay, so this happened in Utah's legislative session, where voter registration records are no longer private. So, like addresses, your party affiliation, how you have voted, when you have voted, is all public. And this is done by the party who has been hand-wringing historically over my privacy. The government shouldn't have my data, my privacy. Okay, so when you're in power, you don't care about that. And like, to be clear, this is voter intimidation. It is meant to suppress votes. It is meant to make it so that people are afraid to get registered, to actually vote and be politically targeted, that people will be doxxed because of their addresses being public and how they are voting. That this is a way to enforce this fascist policy of ethnic cleansing and targeting people at their homes and deporting them or detaining them, kidnapping them, and putting them in concentration camps where the conditions are horrible. So when I say that there are many things that go on in Utah that fly under the radar because some people just seem to think like, oh, it's full of like a lot of Mormons and they're kind of weird, but like nice. It's like, no, there are very fascist policies that are happening here that often start here, along with Texas and Florida and Tennessee, to suppress the vote and also make it so that corporations have more rights than human beings, that they have no regulations really that they have to follow. So just keep that in mind.
Some 300,000 registered voters in Utah are receiving or have received a letter from the lieutenant governor notifying
I got
them
this
that
last
because of
week,
a new
this
law
letter.
just passed by the legislature, their voter records, their voter registration information will no longer be private unless they meet certain criteria. And people are pretty unhappy about it.
This is in response to Senate Bill 153, which was just passed and signed by the governor. It says that if a voter's registration record was classified as private without a reason listed before April 6, 2026, that voter's registration will be reclassified as a public voter registration record unless the voter submits a form with the required proof to their county clerk. So it gives them some notice to give that information as to why their voter information should be private.
So I want to clarify what is considered public information. So that would be a voter's full name, their date of birth, their residential and mailing, not their date of birth. I'm sorry, their full name, their voter identification number, residential and mailing address, their voting precinct and districts, their party affiliation, their status as an active or inactive voter, the last date the voter's registration record was updated, and a list of elections in which the voter cast a ballot. So if you only vote in the general election, that information will be out there. If you vote in every primary and every general, that information will be out there. And then personal identifying information like the full date of birth, your driver's license number, your social security number, those remain protected.
So to me, your address is pretty private information, and your party affiliation probably could be. So those are two things that would be troubling, and apparently are a little bit troubling to some of our listeners.
Well, we already have text
especially
from
the
listeners.
address.
And if you've got a question, you can text us 57500, and we'll try to get an answer for you. Because we have with us on the line Shelley Jackson, the Deputy Director of Elections from the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. Thanks for joining us, Shelley.
Thank you. Good morning.
So first of all, sorry, why did the Lieutenant Governor send out these letters that are landing in people's mailboxes?
Great question. Yes. So the Lieutenant Governor is the Chief Election Officer in the state of Utah, and so it is her responsibility to notify voters of this change. And so this isn't our policy decision. It was a policy and a bill passed by the legislature. But one thing that we did advocate for during the session was that we felt that it was very important that voters get proper notice and have time to, maybe file that at-risk form or just to know what was going to happen.
Yeah, they did not make this publicly known. They did how they were talking about, it was important to us to give people notice. Yeah, what fucking notice? I didn't know that you had to apply before April 6th to request to have your records be private.
You tell our listeners
Plenty of other people did
basically
not.
what was contained in the letter, what information is given to these voters?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are going to be two different letters going out. The first one that started going out this week was to people whose records are currently withheld, which up until this point has meant that they were never given out to parties. Their names never appeared on lists when the public or the parties asked to get voter lists. The second letter that will start going out potentially today, probably next week, is a letter to the voters whose information was considered private, which meant it never appeared on a public list, but it did appear on lists requested by the party. So we've had this weird kind of multi-layered level of privacy before, and now we're going to a much simpler, you're either private or you're not.
So Shelley, there's a couple of themes that I've already seen emerge from the texts and comments that we've gotten already. And one of them is, how does this protect me from scammers? And the other one is,
oh my God. This goes to show the demographic that is listening to this. It's all old boomers. Also, do you see how all of the reporters are boomers as well? Why is it that these people refuse to leave the workforce or provide room for younger people to actually have a chance?
Why is all my information being made available?
Those are great questions. The list has to be purchased at this point. So it's not like it's just appearing on a website or anything. Someone does have to make that request through our office, and they do have to sign a form and make assertions that they're going to handle the data carefully.
Are you going to work with ICE? That is the thing that I'm most concerned about. Also, for them to target people who do create these political enemies of the state if you don't agree with all of these fascistic policies.
And then your second question, sorry, what was your second question?
It just, why is my private information being made public?
Well, historically, voter records, and in many states, have been and are very public. It kind of started, the genesis of it was to make sure that you weren't being unfairly taken off the rolls, so you could always have that information available and know that you were still on the rolls. That was definitely before, the day and age where we had online, we had all of these data privacy concerns, but that's the genesis of it. And really the parties, the candidates were very upset that they felt like there were huge gaps of Utahns not appearing on their lists when they made the request.
So you talked about two letters, one which
So
went
this is self-serving. Clearly, the candidates were upset that they don't have all of everyone's voting information. This is for the legislators are creating this by and for legislators. This is to help them in their re-election campaigns and also to target their political enemies.
recently, Shelley, and the other one's going out soon. Are these two different groups of people?
Yes. So the first list the letters that people have gotten this week, those people, their records up until this point had been protected, so that anytime a party or the public requested a list, their names were not ever appearing on those lists. But now potentially they will be.
So, Shelley, then, of course, the follow-up question is, if people want to keep their information private, what do they do? What are the guidelines for people who can qualify for that?
Yes, good question. So, and that's why the letters went out now. The letters that went out this week had what we call an at-risk form with it. And so if the people qualify, meaning they're active duty military, they're law enforcement, they're a public figure, someone that is worried about some domestic violence issues or have a protective order, or anyone living in a household with someone that I just listed off, can fill out that at-risk form and return it to their county clerk.
Of course, they're most worried about
Can
cops
always be completed
and military
turned in at any
personnel
point, but
and legislators.
in order for these records to not be
So all of their addresses, their voter history and affiliation, they will be protected.
disclosed, they do need to be returned by May 25th. Because if they're not done by May 25th, the voter will become public and then would have to make themselves protected.
So if I, for example, don't have any one of those qualifying conditions, but want my records private, I cannot have them made private?
Unfortunately, that is now correct, yes.
Okay.
So, Shelley, one of the things that I've already seen from several texters, if they're saying that if that's the case, they want to just unregister and they won't be registered to vote anymore. Is that?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
That is the intention. That's the intention.
The legislature considered
it's voter
that,
intimidation.
Consequence?
We do know they considered it because we brought that up as a consequence, and they felt the transparency was more important, and they felt like that would people would not choose to unregister themselves. Unfortunately, we have already heard from callers yesterday in our office of people who were literally at a county clerk's office unregistering. And
yeah, that's the intention, especially people who are immigrants, people like depending on documentation status. This is going to be used to profile people, to intimidate them and kidnap them, especially when it comes to just racially profiling people. Not to mention the documentation status that they don't even care about anymore, ICE.
That's unfortunate.
You can tell I'm upset. I'm like all over the place with my thoughts. I'm going to get a drink. I'll be right back.
And we absolutely hate to see that.
Yeah, and I hate to even go down this road, but I just wanted to ask, can a person, and I don't want to know how exactly, but can a person unregister to vote?
Yes, it's just really a written notice to your county clerk. The county clerk will want certain information to verify that that's you and it's not someone doing it on your behalf. But unfortunately, yes, that is a fairly easy thing to do.
Well, let's hope a lot of people don't do that.
All right, Shelley, stay with us. We're going to come back with more questions after the break. And just to our listeners, if you've got questions, text us 57500. We're going to ask Shelley your questions and share a few of your comments. Before we go into some of the texter questions, actually, this is one of the questions. How is this different or the same as the Department of Justice demanding all of Utah's voter files?
I'm so glad you asked that. They're two very separate issues. So what the DOJ is asking every state for is the complete unredacted voter list. So they particularly want social security numbers, driver's license numbers, full dates of birth, all of those things, which will not be released under any circumstances under this new SB 153. Now, Lieutenant Governor Henderson has been adamant in telling the DOJ that they have not stated a case for it, and she will not, that it would violate some Utah privacy laws, and she will not give it up, and they have actually sued us.
So I just want to be clear, there are two separate issues, and though they seem similar, they actually are not the same. So your voter information in Utah, the part that would be public includes your name, it includes your address, it includes your voter registration status and whether you've voted in, elections, primary elections, general elections, etc. But it doesn't include social security numbers, driver's license information, phone number, and email. Is that correct?
That is correct. And no social security number. Correct.
So, Shelley, there are a class of individuals who can submit a form saying that they qualify for an exemption so that their status can be considered to be private. And one of those is if you are a public figure, I believe. And some of our listeners are chiming in and going, well, what qualifies as a public figure? I know under the law, for purposes of like First Amendment issues and things like that, you can quantify what a public figure is. How do you think your office is going to treat that?
Correct. And so office actually won't be making any of these determinations. The voter records are the county clerks are the custodians of the voter records. So I live in Davis County, so the Davis County clerk is the custodian of my record. So those determinations will be made by each county clerk.
Oh, so you submit that and say, hey, I think I'm a public figure, and then the county clerk will make a determination as to whether or not you would qualify for that.
He's doing that for himself.
And this legislation did expand public figure to include elected officials.
But I have a question.
Of course they did.
Well, what if you have a county clerk who has a bone to pick? Like, you know, that's one of the issues I think that people have been worried about is saying, well, I know you and I'm not going to give you any kind of protections. Is there any kind of recourse if I file with my county clerk and he's like, I don't like Holly Richardson, so I'm not going to give you protected status or private status?
Yes, and that, unfortunately, we hope that won't happen. That is always a possibility when humans are involved. In that case, I would absolutely ask those voters, those individuals to contact our office, and then we can work with that county clerk and we can, you know, get the attorney general and the county attorney involved.
Okay, I have a follow-up question on the public figure question. What about social media influencers?
Yeah, and I believe that would qualify, and I believe that qualified under the old definition. I'd have to reread that definition, but yes, I do think that would be covered.
Is there like a specific number? Do you have to have like, I have this many Instagram followers? Like, I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think it is quite that specific. I'm actually
You're not asking the important questions, like will people?
While you're doing that, I'm guessing Holly Richardson is a public figure.
Will this be used to
I would say
target people?
I know
like ICE
you can
using
find
this
me
shit
easily
Anywhere,
online
right,
and
yeah.
anywhere, and my voter registration information is public and has been since I registered. But let me ask you this question also, then, Shelley. People want to know. Can they unregister to vote, register to vote just before an election, and then unregister?
Yes, absolutely. Especially in Utah, we do have same-day registration, so you could show up at any polling place during early voting or election day. That does get complicated, and I do think the way the lists are pulled, that at some point, you know, I think the party or someone would pull that list at a point where your name would show up.
And just to be clear, Holly's not advocating for that.
No, I'm passing on
kidding, but
information that our
Your county
listeners
clerk is not advocating for that either.
Yeah,
Right. No, I know,
so.
but we've had more than one person ask that question. They still want to vote, but they don't want their information out there. And I think right now, like we've had multiple texts, but the most common thing I am seeing is I don't want scammers coming after me. One has shared that they felt like their son was targeted with the whole Prop 4 thing, whether you're going to sign, not sign, remove your signature. We've got
Scammers,
some
of course.
older
It's
texters that say they
boomers.
already feel like they have scammers targeting them. Would this make it easier? Right. I mean, I think there's some real
people
concern
thinking
here.
more about
I think these are
scammers
absolutely
than about
legitimate
like
concerns, and I
the
do think,
safety
you know,
of other
the
people.
transparency laws around voter registration, you know, were definitely evolved during a different time when it was less easy to get those information. But I absolutely heard from people yesterday who felt like their employer would target them based on their registration.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my guess is that, by experience, I guess I should say, is that the county clerks try to do a very good job, and they generally do. But some of this has got to be discretionary. For example, if you're a victim of domestic violence, I mean, I don't suppose they have to go in and pull up your criminal case. You know, maybe if you've got a protective order, you've got things like that. There are probably some things that you could submit to help prove that. Do you think that makes sense?
Yes, you could absolutely bring in those. With the domestic violence, our recommendation to the clerks would be to treat that very carefully and to not re-victimize those people, and so to tread lightly with that.
So what about people who maybe don't have a protective order and they're no longer married? Maybe they don't have specific instances.
Notably,
of physical
they're not
domestic violence,
talking
but they still
about
want
people
their ex to know
worried
where they
about
live.
documentation
Sometimes it's
Provided in
status.
a divorce decree, no contact order or something like that. I think that might be something. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to answer the question.
Well,
for
I mean,
you,
if you're
but it seems like
undocumented,
there
you
may be
can't
some
vote
things like that that
anyway.
can-
So I guess
that can
that's
be
kind of null
used,
and void.
by-
But
I don't know, Shelley, I don't want to speak for you at all, but there are probably
people
some
who
documents you
have
can
green
submit with respect to the
cards,
divorce decree that could help with that.
Those are absolutely all legitimate
whatever
things that you can
their
submit as proof. I think
legal
some county clerks would be willing
status
to
that
have you write out a statement and attest
ICE
to that.
hasn't
And
cared.
I don't want to speak for the county clerks, and I know they want to try very hard to stay on the right side of the law and to interpret this and to execute it as it was written. But, you know, again, our advice is to tread lightly with especially that class of people and to not re-victimize them.
All right, Shelley.
And at the end of the day, what we don't want is someone to get hurt or killed.
Exactly. Absolutely. So just to wrap up as we conclude this segment, can you just remind our listeners what is public, what's not, and what the deadlines are?
Yes, great. So the things that will be public, your full name, your address, which includes a mailing address, your party affiliation, or the fact that you're unaffiliated, your voting precinct, whether you're an active or active voter, so your voter status, the last date that you've made a change to your voter registration, and a list of the past elections you voted in. Those are all public things. What will absolutely never be shared with anyone is your full date of birth, your driver's license number, or your state ID number, and your social security number. And we also currently do not share with anyone email addresses or phone numbers. Next year, part of this bill does allow the voter to consent to share an email or a phone number with the party they're affiliated with, but that would have to be done through direct consent by the voter, and that is not until next year.
All right.
The deadline to get these all turned in is May 25th.
Wonderful. Thanks, Shelley. That was Shelley Jackson, Deputy Director of Elections for the Office of Lieutenant Governor. And I have to say, the Lieutenant Governor's office and the county clerks are probably going to be taking some heat for this, but it wasn't their idea.
Yeah.
This was all legislative. And
Contact
so,
your legislators.
contact your legislature.
Okay. Shall we move on to Culture Corner? I did want to show something that I have been painting that I want to finish. I'm going to grab that. It's actually this that's behind me. This is something I painted. You have bad taste. It's like taste is all subjective, but also I think I objectively have the best taste. It's supposed to look like it's like carved into a tongue. I need to do the background still. But especially living in Utah, hello, there's so much bad taste. It's offensive to my sensibilities. But I need to do like the skin tone. Normally, if you are thinking ahead and not impulsive, you actually do the background first when you're painting. And notoriously, I don't do this because I like get impulsive or I have an idea and I'm just like, no, and I just start painting. I don't like sketch things out, and I probably should. Nor do I do a background first. So, thank you. We'll see. We'll see what I do. I'll keep you all updated. Thank you. This is also something I wanted to show. When I went to India and visited family, I came back and painted this. It has like a little Taj Mahal in the eye. It's supposed to be like the eye of Krishna. I just like, when I was there, I had like an image of like this eye in my mind. And again, I started with this and didn't do the background. Not the best technique. I should know better too, but I don't know. I just am like, if I feel inspired by something, I just like go into it, and that's probably not the best strategy. But there we go. Okay. So, continuing with Culture Corner, this was a song that was recommended by a chatter a little bit ago called Solidarity Forever, and I like the sound of that. And in parentheses, it says illegal version. I don't know what that means, or if I'll be arrested after this, but it looked very intriguing to me. And it's by Jester of No Court. So let's see what this has in store for us. Huh? Okay, I just need to refresh this. I'm gonna pull up some lyrics for
When
this.
the boss's sanguination through the city streets does run, there can be no power greater than the barrel of a gun. And when the bourgeoisie protests expropriate their tongue, for the black bloc makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the black bloc makes us strong. The fuck we got in common with the greedy parasite who would kill a union activist to give their coal a bite. The pigs work for the bosses, so get strapped in for a fight, for the black bloc makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the black bloc makes us strong. It's we who run the weapons plants and fight the wars they wage, and who work consumer
so
hotlines
using
from
the
inside
tune
of a cage.
oh, what is it? Hallelujah. What song is that? It's doing different lyrics to this song. I do like the mention of Black Bloc, talking about the capitalists who would kill a union activist to give their coal a bite. Yeah.
It's we who sweep the stock exchange where it's our lives they trade, but the black bloc makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the black bloc makes us strong. All the world the pigs patrol is ours and ours alone. All their deeds have the authority of workers crunching bone. But when their city hall explodes, it's we who own that drone, for the black bloc makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever.
Oh, this is long.
Solidarity forever, for the black bloc makes us
Neighborhoods.
strong. Their dollars
Split a race
are
and
labor.
gender.
When we overwork, they earn. But without our brain and muscle, there's no treatment for a burn. No one to put out mansion fires where charring bodies turn, while the black bloc makes us strong. Solidarity forever.
Saying united that we'd rise to kick their ass. Yep.
Solidarity forever.
They racketeer, enslave, murder, gas us while we grieve.
They come pollute our neighborhoods and privatize the grass. They exploit our race and gender to divide the working class. Because they know united that we'd rise to kick their ass, for the black bloc makes us strong. Solid.
Okay. The acoustic in the background is not usually my taste, but I do appreciate the sentiment of the song. I really like the lyrics too. So we'll burn every yogurt shop until the pigs believe that the black bloc makes us strong. We're told of all the progress that democracy has made, but the myth of meritocracy don't match what we get paid. There's no hope in a ballot box, but on a barricade, for the black bloc makes us strong. If you protest a pay cut, then you're fired on the spot. Then they throw you in a jail cell if you sell all that you got. So all sex workers take up arms and take the money shot, for the black bloc makes us strong. They tell us job security will come to us with time, while our kin retire homeless at the age of 89. With theft and solidarity, it's our assembly line, for the black bloc makes us strong. Cool. A song for organizing. I'm always for that. This week, I do want to talk about Black Bloc and direct action. Very pertinent to the warehouse fires and getting out of this mess. Okay, so Robin, the famous musician who did Dancing on My Own, Queer Icon, she came out with a new album called Sexistential, and I haven't heard any of it, but I did want to listen to the song that the album is named after.
Fuck a app, I need me some.
Already I like this.
Fuck a app, I need me some IRL. I'm on the clock, just give me your ASL. Fuck a plan B, baby, it's no big deal. I'm already 10 weeks in maternity. Fuck a single mom, I'm not judgmental. In my sweatpants and some juicy hentai. Fuck a therapist, is not mental. I need philosophy, this shit is existential. I was about to go have a kid on my own, and then my doctor said, now Robin, who would be your dream donor? Well, Adam Driver always did kinda give me a boner. She like, yeah, wasn't he great, and don't mess with the Zoan. I like to go out, wear something nice, and push. This shit is existential.
This is not at all what I was expecting.
Wear something nice, and push. This is existential. Fuck a app. Fuck a single mom. Shit is existential. Fuck a plan B, baby. Fuck a therapist. I've been on Raya while on IVF.
Wait, what does that mean? Like, fuck a single mom? Like, literally? Or, like, you don't want to be a single mom? I guess this is my sign to delete Grindr and go out. Robin really said go out, get bread. Yeah, I don't know about that. This is more about her journey, I guess. That she's wanting a kid, how she's talking about IVF. I went from what the fuck is this to this is absolutely genius in less than 5 seconds. Just finding out that she was pregnant at 43 and her son is the child in the Dopamine music video. What? Being bred. I don't like that concept. I mean, I know there's like a kink that is about breeding. That's fine, but I don't like how that has become much more like mainstream in terms of socializing people, like, oh, that's what you should like, as opposed to choosing that for yourself.
PTSD from other tests. Hormonal rants on IG, scrolling my feed while breastfeeding. Spend too much on Etsy. Expensive shit I don't need. Bossy, bad, and bougie. Like push, hold it, breathe. I like to go out, wear something nice, and push. Shit is existential. I like to go out, wear something nice.
I do like the beat.
Push. It's existential. My body's a spaceship with the ovaries on hyperdrive. Got a whole universe inside that exists in between my thighs. Do I have the consistent will to persist and finish this ride? My baby makers got 20 in the clip, ready to fire. Fuck a app. Fuck a single mom. Fuck a plan B, baby. Baby makers, makers. Fuck a therapist. I like to go out, wear something nice, and push. Shit is existential.
This is my favorite part of the song. Like, especially with Plant B being so scarce for a lot of people. I don't know about that. I know she's talking about her own experience and she's allowed that, but on like a general principle, which is what I do tend to look at art from.
Nice and push. This shit is existential.
Interesting. Okay. Thundercat came out with a new album that is very good, and I really like this song.
Hey, what are you doing later tonight after you're done with work?
I don't know if it's gonna pull up the lyrics. I may have to pull up some.
Hey, what are you doing later tonight after you're done with work?
Well, there we go.
I know you might be tired. I'm gonna be awake.
Got me looking like
I went to go get water and I left it out. I didn't even realize that. I'm gonna get it real quick.
Oh, you weird
admit, I think there are a lot of Thundercat songs that sound similar, but many artists do this kind of approach to their art. He really does create such great beats, though.
Bitch, stop acting like you never seen realness. Bitch, stop acting like
I really like the bass in this too.
I usually hang around guys who's rebels who sip on codeine, I know Red Bull. Cleared out my whole schedule and still you.
It has like that wow to it. It's like kind of sometimes referred to as a wet bass because it goes like wow. It sounds like it. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but you can hear it.
Cause the more that I look in your face, you look like your dad, and it's hard picking him with a big old white ass. Damn, that's crazy.
Like he has his jacket on backwards. I don't remember the song Great Americans, but I like that name. I'm interested if it's some form of commentary. Okay. So, I showed the introduction to this, or like the announcement of this ballet, Gentleman Jack, that is about Anne, what is her name? Lister, who is a very famous lesbian, which is cool, except Anne Lister was not that nice. So at least, like, yeah, described as the first modern lesbian. No, don't give her that title. She's not the first modern lesbian. Lesbians have existed for all time. Just queer people in general. Just saying. But this is a little bit of the background. A powerful Yorkshire woman, it was only after her death, when her secret diaries were decoded, that a truly exceptional life was uncovered. Described by some as the first modern lesbian, Anne lived, dressed, and loved as she desired, not as 19th century society expected her to. With her words dancing across the page, she vividly chronicled her adventures, heartbreaks, and triumphs. Yeah, so, she is problematic, I think, like, could be abusive, but also actual documentation from history of queerness during this time. She dressed very mask presenting, which is cool. I like that. But they're making a ballet out of it, especially seeing like women partner dancing. That heals my inner child because it's like growing up queer in this world of ballet, like just seeing a lot of this like heteronormative stuff, even though so many people are queer in that space, like just in the arts in general, like a lot of the men who were dancing as well. It's really cool to see this sapphic celebration, but acknowledging the problematic parts as well. This again. Music is cool. Wearing that top hat is so hot to me. Ooh. Look. It's like making me kind of emotional. Just like seeing the costuming too. The announcement, it showed them in rehearsal. It didn't show as much of the costuming or the sets. So now we're actually getting more of an idea of what the ballet will actually look like. This is so cool, especially doing this partnering like this, that typically like a dude would be doing. This cane. I love a cane. That's me. That's who I think I am in my head. So I'm like, oh, let me check my my pocket watch. Very cool. That is so hot. That dancing. For the lesbians from the rest of the world, please stream this. Oh my God, yes. I beg of thee, yes. Everyone, all the lesbians being like, please, this is for us, and what if we can't even see this? Where is this done? I don't know where Northern Ballet is. I guess I could look it up. Shall we? Northern Ballet. So cool. Oh, it's in England. Of course it is. Yeah. Please, for people who do not live there, we would like to see this. Please and thank you. You as well, Tan. Yeah, all of the comments are like, please. Exactly why this art is still alive and is going to stay. Yeah. Yeah. Timotei, are you listening? People love ballet and they love opera, despite what young Timotei thinks. But we're not looking to him for taste. That's my take. Okay. I was going to provide some hot takes on some things that I've been writing down, things that I've had thoughts about. Absolutely not. Okay. So, Bridgerton. I watched the latest season of Bridgerton. I liked it at the beginning, that I was like, okay. I mean, I've watched all of the seasons. It is entertaining. I'll say that, and compelling, a lot of compelling storylines. But it's overtly classist. I do think the Queen's wigs are the best part of the show. I don't like, though, that it is a colonial empire, like in the Queen Charlotte, like, side show that they had. She mentions, like, sapphires from India. So I'm like, oh, so you're, like, colonizers. Okay. And so it's kind of this, like, interesting portrayal of identity politics and class. I liked in the latest season that they were working towards getting her acceptance, like the love interest who was a maid, that she would be accepted and it would be allowed for like this Bridgerton son, this upper class guy, to marry her, getting the blessing of the queen. And then in the end, they just like pretend that she was noble. And I'm like, so what was all that about? What happened to like class solidarity? I guess there's class solidarity among them, but there were people that were like trying to fight for her acceptance who did come from the lower classes. So I was like, oh, that's cool, solidarity. But then it ended up like being for naught because she pretended to be of noble birth anyway. So that's my take. Peaky Blinders. I watched the movie recently that came out with, it has like a different ending because I think a lot of people were upset about the ending and they're like, oh, we need to make a movie because people are mad. And it's interesting because on one hand, like they claim that they're Romani, but they're all white. So I have a problem with that because like one of the reasons Romani people are marginalized, like historically throughout time, is because of these racialized constructs that they impose on people. There's something called like Irish travelers where they are nomadic and they could also be discriminated against. And so it seems like it's this blending of Irish travelers who are white and Romani people who are not, who are from the not continent. Oh my God. You can tell it's a Monday. From India. They're part of the Indian diaspora. And so I'm like, then why do we have all of these white people who are playing Romani people? Why couldn't they cast Romani people? That would make the show way more interesting to me. Instead of them like pretending to be Romani, that would add a lot of visibility and representation, but also like talking about the constructs of race during this time when Peaky Blinders takes place. I think that could just elevate the art. So I don't like that they had all of these white people. But yeah, like a lot of the traditional activities that they show them do or that they engage in are more common among like the Desi diaspora. And so it's like, okay, you want to lift these things from Romani culture, continue to invisibilize people who have like historically been invisibilized and erased from historical texts, who've been genocided, who have been subject to chattel slavery, and you get to take their stories and then put white people there. I have a problem with that. This is something that I have thought for a while, but with AI, how they like use the sparkle emoji to show if something's going to be AI or not. And I don't like that because I liked the sparkle emoji. I would do it a lot of like, oh, hi. And now I don't want to use it as much because now I associate it with AI. Okay, erotica apps. I will indulge in these sometimes. I like erotica, particularly if it is well written because I'm a snob and I like want the story to make sense. But it seems to me now there is even more of an oversaturation of a lot of very dominant, aggressive, hetero cis relationships that are portrayed in these stories. And there isn't any sort of like disclaimer about consent or like education about what consent means. And I think all of these apps like need some sort of tutorial at the beginning or something like that. Or the authors need to include something that's like, hey, this is showing like some like a romanticization of certain like kink or fetishes, and that this is not indicative of like what people should always be doing in their lives when they're not getting consent for, especially when it is harming other people. And there is very little content about female doms showing like female domination, because guess what? I've looked, and that is very concerning to me, especially as like there are so many ads for these apps, like along with like games and stuff, that it worries me, especially for like young people growing up, that there already is so much cis-het propaganda that exists in the world. But then when we have these stories where people are like learning about sexuality, that most of the portrayals are not showing like overt ways to get consent. And I have a problem with that. Not to say that like people can't write stories where that isn't a thing, but I just feel like there needs to be like the education piece first And like that doesn't necessarily have to be a burden on the authors all the time. I think that's like a responsible thing to do if you're an artist and a writer and you want to make sure that like people are not employing these kinds of like tactics and behavior in their own lives. But like the apps for sure, I think should have like this education or something about consent, because there are some stories that I've read where it is just like outright abuse. It's not even like enjoyable for like the main character, and there's a lot of romanticizing like cruelty. It's like, I love kink, I love BDSM, like when you can do this in a consensual manner, cool, love that. But I do worry about its impact on young people, especially in this fascist moment when we have things like trad wives and a lot of strict gender roles that are being imposed and are coming back, especially with like lack of access to reproductive health care. There is a lot, like speaking of like the breeding concept, that is becoming much more of a pronounced thing in mainstream culture, which it's always been part of kink, but to have it be like common knowledge without the like explanation of like, oh, this is a fetish or this is a kink, that I worry that it's like girls, especially people with uteruses, grow up a lot of the time feeling like that's the only thing society values you for, especially in these fascist moments where it is very clear that's what they think about people with uteruses, that like you need to be a baby factory and not have any sort of autonomy. So I want to acknowledge the nuance there, where like we can indulge in these stories that engage in like BDSM, because that's fun. I love that. But also like making sure that there is education available somehow, I think is also important. Yeah. I was thinking I would be more eloquent with all of those points, but there you go. Those are my recent hot takes. Okay. Should we get into the reading? We are on chapter 6. And we did see Marguerite, otherwise known as Lady Blakeney. Her name used to be Marguerite Saint-Just. And that she had a run-in with these French aristocrats who were recently saved by the Scarlet Pimpernel. And some of the people that helped with this, they learned that Marguerite turned in someone to the Committee of Public Safety and ended up being killed, he and his family. And since this is aristocratic propaganda, we have to call out that like maybe she had good reasons for doing this. Maybe this is someone who deserved it. And so the French aristocrats are mad about it, and now the people who helped with their rescue are concerned. They look very worried upon finding out this information. They're still at the Fisherman's Rest, and we have yet to meet her husband, Sir Percy, but we will now. Okay. So this is chapter 6, An Exquisite of 92. Sir Percy Blakeney, as the chronicles of the time inform us, was in this year of grace, 1792, still a year or two on the right side of 30. Tall, above the average, even for an Englishman, broad-shouldered and massively built, He would have been called unusually good-looking, but for a certain lazy expression in his deep-set blue eyes, and that perpetual inane laugh, which seemed to disfigure his strong, clearly cut mouth. It was... so, like, he would be handsome if he wasn't so annoying. It was nearly a year ago now, that Sir Percy Blakeney, one of the richest men in England, leader of all the fashions and intimate friend of the Prince of Wales, had astonished fashionable society in London and Bath by bringing home, from one of his journeys abroad, a beautiful, fascinating, clever French wife. He, the sleepiest, dullest, most Britisher that had ever set a pretty woman yawning, had secured a brilliant matrimonial prize for which, as all chroniclers aver, there had been many competitors. Okay, and then we have a footnote. Marguerite Saint-Just had first made her debut in artistic Parisian circles at the very moment when the greatest social upheaval the world has ever known was taking place within its very walls. Okay, footnote. This young beauty was vaguely related to the famous revolutionary Louis-Antoine Léon de Saint-Just, a renowned partisan of the revolution and an influential orator of the convention. Elected deputy in 1792, he played a crucial role among the radicals known as the Montagnards, along with Maximilien de Robespierre, Georges Danton, and Jean-Paul Marat. Saint-Just was instrumental in drafting the 1793 Constitution and served on the Committee for Public Safety. A strong ally of Robespierre, he was arrested and executed with him in July 1794. Scarcely 18, lavishly gifted with beauty and talent, chaperoned only by a young and devoted brother, she had soon gathered round her in her charming apartment in the Rue Richelieu a coterie which was as brilliant as it was exclusive. Exclusive, that is to say, only from one point of view. Marguerite Saint-Just was from principle and by conviction a Republican. Equality of birth was her motto. Equality of birth. Forgot to mention else. Oh, you're good. What did you make today? I'd love to know. Inequality of fortune was in her eyes a mere untoward accident, but the only inequality she admitted was that of talent. Okay. Money and titles may be hereditary, she would say, but brains are not. And thus her charming salon was reserved for originality and intellect, for brilliance and wit, for clever men and talented women. That's very sapiosexual of her. Great music. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll send the links to things. I have forgotten to do this for the past few streams, but I'll do that now. The tray bake of veggies. Ooh, rice to pear and guac. Ah, that sounds so good. Love. Which even in those days, and... Oh, wait, what? For clever men and talented women, and the entrance into it was soon looked upon in the world of intellect, which even in those days and in those troublous times found its pivot in Paris as the seal to an artistic career. Clever men, distinguished men, and even men of exalted station performed a perpetual and brilliant court round the fascinating young actress of the Comédie Française, and she glided through Republican, revolutionary, bloodthirsty Paris. Cool. Love that. Like a shining comet with a trail behind her of all that was most distinguished, most interesting in intellectual Europe. Then the climax came. Oh, did it? Okay. Some smiled indulgently and called it an artistic eccentricity. Others looked upon it as a wise provision in view of the many events which were crowding thick and fast in Paris just then. But to all, the real motive of that climax remained a puzzle and a mystery. Anyway, Marguerite Saint-Just married Sir Percy Blakeney one fine day, just like that, without any warning to her friends, without a soirée de contrat or dîner de fiançailles. or other appurtenances of a fashionable French wedding. Appurtenances, that's a word I haven't read in a while. I don't remember what that means. Let us check. Appurtenance. An accessory or other item associated with a particular activity or style of living. Okay. So it's kind of like accoutrement, but for living. Okay. How that stupid, dull Englishman ever came to be admitted within the intellectual circle which revolved round the cleverest woman in Europe, as her friends unanimously called her, no one ventured to guess. Golden key is said to open every door, asserted the more malignantly inclined. Okay, so we have to acknowledge here that class was not this fluid, that Marguerite as an actress, even if she was like renowned across Europe, it was not as likely for her to marry a lord, someone with a title. And the fact that she is looked upon as the most like the cleverest woman in Europe before she married a lord is very much not likely. But that would be cool if she was able to get that kind of notoriety just on her actual merits. But unlikely for the time. Enough, she married him. And the cleverest woman in Europe had linked her fate to that demmed idiot, Blakeney. And not even her most intimate friends could assign to this strange step any other motive than that of supreme eccentricity. Those friends who knew laughed to scorn the idea that Marguerite Saint-Just had married a fool for the sake of the worldly advantages with which he might endow her. They knew, as a matter of fact, that Marguerite Saint-Just cared nothing about money, and still less about a title. Moreover, there were at least half a dozen other men in the cosmopolitan world, equally born, if not so wealthy as Blakeney, who would have been only too happy to give Marguerite Saint-Just any position she might choose to covet. As for Sir Percy himself, he was universally voted to be totally unqualified for the onerous post he had taken upon himself. Drag him. His chief qualifications for it seemed to consist in his blind adoration for her, his great wealth, and the high favor in which he stood at the English court. But London society thought that, taking into consideration his own intellectual limitations, it would have been wiser on his part had he bestowed those worldly advantages upon a less brilliant and witty wife. Although lately she had been so prominent a figure in fashionable English society, he had spent most of his early life abroad. His father, the late Sir Algernon Blakeney, had had the terrible misfortune of seeing an idolized young wife become hopelessly insane after 2 years of happy married life. Sad. Percy had just been born when the late Lady Blakeney fell a prey to the terrible malady, which in those days was looked upon as hopelessly incurable, and nothing short of a curse of God upon the entire family. So also, like, when they're talking about like madness, sometimes this would just be postpartum depression for women, that women were diagnosed as being mad for just having emotions even. Where did I leave off? Sir Algernon took his afflicted young wife abroad, and there presumably Percy was educated, and grew up between an imbecile mother, that's rude, and a distracted father until he attained his majority. The death of his parents following close upon one another left him a free man, and as Sir Algernon had left a forcibly simple and retired life, the large Blakeney fortune had increased tenfold. Sir Percy Blakeney had travelled— Why don't you distribute that, sir? Rather than hoarding it. Sir Percy Blakeney had travelled a great deal abroad. Okay, I also have to interrupt myself here. Maybe if he worked on distributing his wealth more to the masses in France, they wouldn't feel a need to rise up against the ruling class. That he could be saving lives that way, rather than pretending to be like this heroic vigilante. Like, he could have a much larger impact by distributing wealth that way, but then that means he'd actually have to admit that he sees lower classes as being deserving of more equal treatment. Sir Percy Blakeney had traveled a great deal abroad before he brought home his beautiful young French wife. The fashionable circles of the time were ready to receive them both with open arms. Sir Percy was rich, his wife was accomplished. The Prince of Wales took a very great liking to them both. Within 6 months, they were the acknowledged leaders of fashion and style. Sir Percy's coats were the talk of the town. His inanities were quoted, his foolish laugh copied by the gilded youth at Almanacs. Nope, at Almacs, or the Mall. Everyone knew that he was hopelessly stupid. But then that was scarcely to be wondered at, seeing that all the Blakeneys for generations had been notoriously dull, and that his mother had died an imbecile. That is so rude. Thus society accepted him, petted him, and made much of him, since his horses were the finest in the country, his fêtes and wines the most sought after. A fête is a party. As for his marriage with the cleverest woman in Europe, well, the inevitable came with sure and rapid footsteps. No one pitied him, since his fate was of his own making. There were plenty of young ladies in England of high birth and good looks who would have been quite willing to help him spend the Blakeney fortune, whilst smiling indulgently at his inanities and his good-humoured foolishness. Moreover, Sir Percy got no pity because he seemed to require none. He seemed very proud of his clever wife, and to care little that she took no pains to disguise that good-natured contempt which she evidently felt for him, and that she even amused herself by sharpening her ready wits at his expense. But then Blakeney was really too stupid to notice the ridicule with which his wife cleverly covered him. And if his matrimonial relations with the fascinating Parisienne had not turned out all that his hopes and his dog-like devotion for her had pictured, society could never do more than vaguely guess at it. In his beautiful house at Richmond, he played second fiddle to his clever wife with imperturbable bonhomie. He lavished jewels and luxuries of all kinds upon her, which she took with inimitable grace, dispensing the hospitality of his superb mansion with the same graciousness with which she had welcomed the intellectual coterie of Paris. Physically, Sir Percy Blakeney was undeniably handsome, always excepting the lazy, bored look with which was habitual to him. Although a lazy, bored look, I feel like, is often viewed as like a very hot, sexy thing, so maybe not in this particular circumstance. He was always irreproachably dressed and wore the exaggerated incroyable fashions. Okay, we get a footnote. Les Incroyables, the Incredibles, were young dandies of the Revolutionary era who transformed fashion into a political statement. Largely royalists, they were famous not only for their eccentric fashions, which included enormous glasses and outlandish wigs, but also for their affected pronunciation, which elided the letter R. Interesting. Their female counterparts were known as les merveilleuses, the marvelous ones. Okay. He was irreproachably dressed and wore the exaggerated incroyable fashions, which had just crept across from Paris to England with the perfect good taste innate in an English gentleman. On this special afternoon, great taste, it's like, because you're conditioned to have good taste, you have like tutors, you also grow up having more access to art and money to buy shit, the chance to develop taste. On this special afternoon in September, in spite of the long journey by coach, in spite of rain and mud, his coat set irreproachably across his fine shoulders. His hands looked almost femininely white as they emerged through billowy frills of finest Mechlin lace. The extravagantly short-waisted satin coat, wide-lapelled waistcoat, and tight-fitting striped breeches set off his massive figure to perfection, and in repose one might have admired so fine a specimen of English manhood, until the foppish ways, the affected movements, the perpetual inane laugh, they keep calling him inane, brought one's admiration of Sir Percy Blakeney to an abrupt close. I mean, he better be well-dressed if he has that much money. He had lolled into the old-fashioned inn parlor, shaking the wet off his fine overcoat, then putting up a gold-rimmed eyeglass to his lazy blue eye. This is so queer. That's me. Like, wearing, like, a waistcoat and, like, having a little glass, be like, I say. Anyway. He surveyed the company, upon whom an embarrassed silence had suddenly fallen. "How do, Tony? How do, folks?" he said, recognizing the two young men, and shaking them by hand. "Zounds, my dear fellow," he added, smothering a slight yawn. I'm struggling today. Smothering a slight yawn. "Did you ever see such a beastly day? Demmed climate, this." With a quaint little laugh, half of embarrassment and half of sarcasm, Marguerite had turned towards her husband and was surveying him from head to foot, with an amused little twinkle in her merry blue eyes. "La!" said Sir Percy after a moment or two's silence, as no one offered any comment. "How sheepish you all look! What's up?" "Oh, nothing, Sir Percy," replied Marguerite, with a certain amount of gaiety, which, however, sounded somewhat forced. "Nothing to disturb your equanimity, only an insult to your wife." The laugh which accompanied this remark was evidently intended to reassure Sir Percy as to the gravity of the incident. It apparently succeeded in that, for echoing the laugh, he rejoined placidly, That's my laugh for him. "La, my dear, you don't say. Begad, who is the bold man who dared to tackle you, eh?" Lord Tony tried to interpose, but he had no time to do so, for the young Vicomte had already quickly stepped forward. "Monsieur," he said, prefixing his little speech with an elaborate bow and speaking in broken English, "my mother is the Comtesse de Tournay de Basserive, had offensed madame, who I see is your wife. I cannot ask your pardon for my mother. What she does is right in my eyes, but I am ready to offer you the usual reparation between men of honor." The young man drew up his slim stature to its full height and looked very enthusiastic, very proud, and very hot as he gazed at 6 foot odd of gorgeousness. 6 foot odd of gorgeousness. Love that. As represented by Sir Percy Blakeney, Bart. "Lud, Sir Andrew," said Marguerite with one of her merry, infectious laughs, "look on that pretty picture. The English turkey and the French bantam." The simile was quite perfect, and the English turkey looked down with complete bewilderment upon the dainty little French bantam, which hovered quite threateningly around him. "La, sir," said Sir Percy at last, putting up his eyeglass and surveying the young Frenchman with undisguised wonderment. "Where in the cuckoo's name did you learn to speak English?" "Monsieur," protested the Vicomte, somewhat abashed at the way his warlike attitude had been taken by the ponderous-looking Englishman. "I protest 'tis marvellous," continued Sir Percy imperturbably. "Damned marvellous! Don't you think so, Tony? Eh? I vow I can't speak the French lingo like that. What?" "Nay, I'll vouch for that," rejoined Marguerite. "Sir Percy has a British accent you could cut with a knife." "Monsieur," interposed the Vicomte earnestly, and in still more broken English, "I fear you have not understand. I offer you the only possible reparation among gentlemen." "What the devil is that?" asked Sir Percy blandly. "My sword, monsieur," replied the Vicomte, who, though still bewildered, was beginning to lose his temper. "You are a sportsman, Lord Tony?" said Marguerite merrily. 10 to 1 on the little bantam. But Sir Percy was staring sleepily at the Vicomte for a moment or two, through his partly closed, heavy lids. Then he smothered another yawn, stretched his long limbs, and turned leisurely away. "Lord love you, sir," he muttered good-humouredly. "Damn it, young man, what's the good of your sword to me?" What the Vicomte thought and felt at that moment, when that long-limbed Englishman treated him with such marked insolence, might fill volumes of sound reflections. What he said resolved himself into a single articulate word, for all the others were choked in his throat by his surging wrath. "A duel, monsieur," he stammered. Once more, Blakeney turned, and from his high altitude, because he's so tall, looked down on the choleric little man before him. But not even for a second did he seem to lose his own imperturbable good humor. He laughed his own pleasant and inane laugh, and burying his slender, long hands into the capacious pockets of his overcoat, he said leisurely, "A duel! La! Is that what ye mean? Odds fish! You are a bloodthirsty young ruffian. Do you want to make a hole in a law-abiding man? As for me, sir, I never fight duels," he added, as he placidly sat down and stretched his long, lazy legs out before him. "Demmed uncomfortable things, duels, ain't they, Tony?" Now the Vicomte had no doubt vaguely heard that in England the fashion of dueling amongst gentlemen had been suppressed by the law with a very stern hand. Still to him, a Frenchman, whose notions of bravery and honor were based upon a code that had centuries of tradition to back it, the spectacle of a gentleman actually refusing to fight a duel was a little short of an enormity. In his mind, he vaguely pondered whether he should strike that long-legged Englishman in the face and call him a coward, or whether such conduct in a lady's presence might be deemed ungentlemanly, when Marguerite happily interposed. "I pray you, Lord Tony," she said in that gentle, sweet, musical voice of hers, "I pray you play the peacemaker. The child is bursting with rage, and," she added with a soupçon of dry sarcasm, "might do Sir Percy an injury." She laughed a mocking little laugh, which, however, did not in the least disturb her husband's placid equanimity. The British turkey has had the day," she said. "Sir Percy would provoke all the saints in the calendar and keep his temper the while." But already Blakeney, good-humoured as ever, had joined in the laugh against himself. "Demmed smart that now, wasn't it?" he said, turning pleasantly to the Vicomte. "Clever woman, my wife, sir. You will find that out if you live long enough in England." I'm trying to remember Lord Antony's voice. What did I do for him? "Sir Percy is right, Vicomte," here interposed Lord Antony, laying a friendly hand on the young Frenchman's shoulders. It would hardly be fitting that you should commence your career in England by provoking him to a duel." For a moment longer the Vicomte hesitated. Then, with a slight shrug of the shoulders directed against the extraordinary code of honor prevailing in this fog-ridden island, he said with becoming dignity, "Ah, well, if monsieur is satisfied, I have no griefs. You, milord, are our protector. If I have done wrong, I withdraw myself." "I do," rejoined Blakeney, with a long sigh of satisfaction. "Withdraw yourself over there. Demmed excitable little puppy," he added under his breath. "Faith, folk, if that's a specimen of the goods you and your friends bring over from France, my advice to you is drop 'em mid-channel, my friend, or I shall have to see the old Pitt about it. Get him to clap on a prohibitive tariff and put you in the stocks and you smuggle." Because he said stocks and you smuggle. "An" here means if. This old use of the word appears throughout the novel. Okay. "La, Sir Percy, your chivalry misguides you," said Marguerite coquettishly. "You forget that you yourself have imported one bundle of goods from France." Blakeney slowly rose to his feet, and making a deep and elaborate bow before his wife, he said with consummate gallantry, I had the pick of the market, madam, and my taste is unerring. More so than your chivalry, I fear, she retorted sarcastically. Odds life, my dear, be reasonable. Do you think I'm going to allow my body to be made a pincushion of by every little frog-eater who don't like the shape of your nose? Lud, Sir Percy, laughed Lady Blakeney as she bobbed him a quaint and pretty curse. You need not be afraid. 'Tis not the men who dislike the shape of my nose. Afraid be damned! Do you impugn my bravery, madam? I don't patronize the ring for nothing, do I, Tony? I've put up the fists with Red Sam before. And now... before now. And he didn't get it all his own way either. "'S'faith, Sir Percy,' said Marguerite with a long and merry laugh that went echoing along the old oak rafters of the parlor. I would I had seen you then. You must have looked a pretty picture, and to be afraid of a little French boy. Ha! It's saying ha 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 ha. Echoed Sir Percy good-humouredly. La, madam, you honour me. Zooks! Folky, mark ye that? I've made my wife laugh, the cleverest woman in Europe. Odds fish, we must have a bowl on that. And he tapped vigorously on the table near him. Hey, jelly! Quick, man! Here, jelly! Harmony was once more restored. Mr. Jellyband, with a mighty effort, recovered himself from the many emotions he had experienced within the last hour. A bowl of punch, Jelly, hot and strong, eh? Said Sir Percy. The wits that have just made a clever woman laugh must be whetted. Hasten, my good Jelly. Nay, there is no time, Sir Percy, interposed Marguerite. The skipper will be here directly, and my brother must get on board, or the Daydream will miss the tide. Time, my dear? There is plenty of time for any gentleman to get drunk and get on board before the turn of the tide. I think you... I'm trying to remember Jellyband's voice. I think, your ladyship, said Jellyband respectfully, that the young gentleman is coming along now with Sir Percy's skipper. That's right, said Blakeney. Then Armand can join us in the merry bowl. Think you, Tony, he added, turning towards the Vicomte, that jackanapes of yours will join us in a glass? Tell him that we drink in token of reconciliation. In fact, you are all such merry company, said Marguerite, that I trust you will forgive me if I bid my brother good-bye in another room. It would have been bad form to protest. Both Lord Antony and Sir Andrew felt that Lady Blakeney could not altogether be in tune with them at the moment. Her love for her brother Armand Saint-Just was deep and touching in the extreme. He had just spent a few weeks with her in English home, and was going back to serve his country at the moment when death was the usual reward for the most enduring devotion. Sir Percy also made no attempt to detain his wife. With that perfect, somewhat affected gallantry which characterized his every movement, he opened the coffee-room door for her and made her the most approved and elaborate bow, which the fashion of the time dictated, as she sailed out of the room without bestowing on him more than a passing, slightly contemptuous glance. Only Sir Andrew Ffoulke, whose every thought since he had met Suzanne de Tournay seemed keener, more gentle, more innately sympathetic, noted the curious look of intense longing, of deep and hopeless passion, with which the inane and flippant Sir Percy followed the retreating figure of his brilliant wife. Intense longing, deep and hopeless passion. So now that he is loving a woman, he's more observant about other people being in love, it seems. But this is a change from Sir Percy's other displays of emotion, where he just is like nonchalant and is like not wanting to take many things seriously. That is directly opposing that sort of persona that he puts on. Okay. That was rough reading, but we got through it. Tomorrow, I would like to talk about Black Bloc, what that means, how to be safe, and get into more about direct action. And then we'll also read the Scarlet Pimpernel. Okay, that's going to be it for me today. And thank you for being here. It was good chatting with you. I hope you enjoy your lovely meal, Tan. Thank you. You too. I hope you have a good rest of your night, day, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.